Chapter 23:14. Removal of foreign body complete. Beginning to accept. Originally, Miss Nan was prepared to let out an ancestral scream, but she soon realized that something was wrong. This vortex didn't seem to be the passage to the next page world. It's still here. She subconsciously looked to her side. Madanzo also looked at her at the same time and gave her an answer. It's still here. Does it mean that they're still in the page world of Motherlode? Nan Xiaonan could not help but feel a chill in her heart. When the core world was destroyed, the entire world turned into a huge sphere, and the last thing that appeared in the sphere was called the seed. Everyone, are you okay? It was Asash's voice. He was not far away. At this time, he was rubbing his head as he stood up. He quickly saw Kay or Lily lying beside him. Kay or Lily also woke up at this time. Her eyes were blank, and she did not know what to do. Where's this place? Another voice sounded. It was Isabel's voice. She stood up awkwardly and looked around with a frown. The surrounding environment was similar to that of the spherical space. It was a dusky environment, but it seemed to be much, much smaller. This place was only about 200 to 300 square meters in size. It was a square space, and all four sides, from top to bottom, were metal decks. This is Celia? Suddenly, Mr. Arthashes cried out in surprise. He found an unconscious girl in the room, Selin, a child who was equally important to Mr. Arthashes. Celia, how are you? Answer me. Celian was a nun in an orphanage secretly funded by Arthasheth. If Kay or Lily was a family member to Asakes, then Celia was a very important friend. A confidant. As for Celia, Arthashes felt sorry for her. Because he couldn't provide her with too many resources, the finances of the orphanage had always been tight. She even had to work part-time every night to barely maintain the expenses of the orphanage. Even so, Celia had never complained about it. She's not dead. Madanzo silently walked to Asash's side. Asakes looked at this child in confusion. He did not seem to know this child, but this child seemed to know Yulia. But she can't wake up. Madanzo shook her head again. Don't worry. As long as I'm alive, I will try my best to make her open her eyes again. You are. Madanzo said indifferently. As for who I am, it's not important for the time being. What's important is that I want to know who he is. Madanzo's eyes suddenly looked at a corner of the room. Affected by it, everyone's eyes also looked at the corner of the room. At this moment, there was a person standing silently in the corner of the room. It was the owner of the prison in the city of God's Blessing, Mr. Allen. Isabel's eyes narrowed. She would not forget that this guy's last sneak attack almost caused the young Elohim to successfully fuse with Motherlode. I didn't expect Elohim to always have a spy in the city of God's Blessing. Isabel looked at Allen and sneered. It seems that old bastard has always known everything about the city of God's Blessing. He's one of the Pope's men? Asakes could not help but frown. He has always been, Isabel said coldly. Unfortunately, he hid it too well. I only found out about it last. Asakes muttered, and there was even a hint of anger in his eyes. He seemed to have understood something. Allen, after we were bombarded, we met in the underground space. Did you do it on purpose? You didn't fall because of the bombardment at all, but you deliberately led us into the core of the earth? He stood there like a ghost, not reacting at all to the interrogation of Asash's and Isabel. Allen? Nan Xiaonan suddenly said, Who are you? Asakes and Isabel looked at Nan Xiaonan subconsciously. She was still Yulia, and they would only treat her as Yulia. Nan Xiaonan took a step forward at this time. I don't know if you have noticed, but the people who were teleported out have a common characteristic. Characteristic? Asakes subconsciously fell into deep thought. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as if he thought of something. Isabel was half a beat faster. They're all people from the venue. That's right. Lady Nan nodded. Whether it's me, Mr. Asakes, Kay, or Lily, or you, Teacher Isabel, Celion, and Madanzo, we all came to this strange place after being swallowed by the black mud in the venue that day. In other words, this Mr. Allen is very likely to be one as well. Once again, they looked at Allen, who was silent in the corner. Although it's very likely that they are all people in the venue. Nan Xiaonan shook her head at this time, but it's hard to say whether they are companions or enemies. It's almost time to reveal your true identity, right? After all, the owner of the dungeon suddenly let out a sigh of relief and took off the iron mask on his face. What was under the mask was not the face of an experienced person, but a very ordinary face. Everyone frowned and tried to find some memories of the other party in the venue that day, but there was no impression. Don't think about it. I'm just a very ordinary person. Mr. Allen shook his head at this time. You might not believe me, but I'm just a temporary worker in the venue that day, not a big shot like you. Asakes and Isabel looked at each other. Nan Xiaonan didn't believe him, but Madanzo didn't say anything. It had its own way of judging and standards. Mr. Allen smiled bitterly. I'm just a logistics person in charge of the stage layout. When the black mud appeared, everyone was swallowed, including me. After I woke up, I was in the city of God. Speaking of which, I might have appeared earlier than Mr. Asakes and Ms. Isabel. He briefly described his experience in the city of God. He didn't have any special talents, but by chance he joined the city of God and became an employee of the Holy See headquarters. 15 years ago, when the Holy See retreated in defeat, he didn't make it in time and was left behind in the end. I did everything I could to survive, Mr. Allen said as he looked at everyone. No matter what kind of business it was, I did it, and in the end, I even became a slave owner. I kept collecting the Holy See's legacy, and in an old site, I found some tools of the Holy See, and there was a tool that was similar to a signal transmitter. So, you're connected to Elohim just like that? Isabel couldn't help but frown. Mr. Allen smiled bitterly. At first, I didn't think that the person I contacted through the signal transmitter would be the Pope of the new Holy See. We did contact each other, but he only said that he was from Laputa. He promised me that as long as I worked for him, he would give me a chance to enter Laputa. Asake sneered. Didn't you say that you were corroded by essence and don't have long to live? That was just to gain your trust. Earl rose. Mr. Allen said calmly. Mr. Allen said calmly, I don't think I've done anything wrong. I just want to live, better live. No wonder you know the mind rewriting skill. It seems like Elohim is secretly supporting you. Arthashes shook his head. Allen, he was right. He did not do anything wrong. In order to survive, no one knew how hard he worked in secret to become the biggest slave owner in God Bless City, and he even established the underground order of God Bless City. Compared to Allen's hard work, Asakes felt that he was just a salted fish, and a salted fish with good luck. First, he became a vampire with power. Then he became the ruler of God Bless City with authority. As for Isabel, her position in the new Holy See was very high, and she even had access to the secrets of essence. However, this Allen had climbed up from the bottom step by step. It seemed that we can get out of here. At this moment, Madanzo's voice suddenly sounded. She stood in front of the wall and pressed her hand on the wall, and a door slowly opened on the wall. What is this place? They had been walking for almost half an hour in this seemingly endless tunnel, but the environment remained the same. They didn't completely trust Aaron's first time, but since Aaron was able to tell them about the Holy Maiden Conference, it proved that he was also from the Free Cities. It seems to be a place similar to a base. Misty couldn't help but shake her head. What she cared about was the cold notification. From a notification, they knew that this should be a huge test site. The core of the Earth they were in was the fourth test site. There were many similar test sites, and they all seemed to be set up to complete the mother lode. Then, who was it that created such a testing ground? Isabel, what happened 15 years ago? Asakes was walking with Celia on his back, and Kay Forehead Lily was following silently. What else do you want to hide? There is no true ancestor of vampires, Isabel said calmly. Isabel said indifferently, this is all a lie from the Vatican. The only real vampire is demons really exist, but they all escaped from the core of the Earth. They're like some kind of failed products. What? Asakes was shocked. Isabel thought for a moment and said, every time E releases the power in her body, she will lose control and cause great damage. In order to cover it up, Pope Cicero created a lie about the true ancestor of vampires, and claimed that only he can fight against the true ancestor. Why did he do that? Lady Nan turned around. I'm not very sure. Isabel shook her head and said, it seems to be to let Dee live in a special environment. 15 years ago, Pope Cicero seemed to want to do something, and it caused his power to go out of control. In that chaos, Pope Cicero was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Although this rampage was controlled, it was still not stable. At this point, Isabel smiled bitterly and said, I don't know if it was fate that I let myself witness this. Originally, I just wanted to find a place to hide. I didn't expect to become the person who heard Pope Cicero's last words. He taught me how to temporarily take away a part of this power and told me about the mother lode. I didn't understand at that time, but now it seems that Cicero had already noticed it. Elohim, perhaps he already knew what he was doing, so he wanted to separate this power in order to prevent Mother Lode from maturing. Actually, Mother Lode should have matured 15 years ago. The Mother Lode we saw might not be the real Mother Lode. Lady Nan took a deep breath at this time. Even if Elohim finally succeeded in fusing with Mother Lode, it's not the real Mother Lode. Yulia? Asakes looked at her in shock. Lady Nan said, even if the Mother Lode in the core world matured, I'm afraid it's only a parameter that needs to be used to create the real Mother Lode. You can't pretend that you didn't hear that notification sound, right? Everyone was silent. The essence fruit was already very magical, and the more terrifying Mother Lode was even more unimaginable. Even so, it was not the essence Mother Lode that needed to be created in the end. Then, what kind of existence would the final product be? At this moment, another door appeared. There was no defense mechanism here, and there was no obstruction along the way. It was as if someone was giving them the green light to go all the way. Everyone cautiously walked through the newly opened door. Their breathing stopped at this moment. The scene in front of Lady Nan was unforgettable for the rest of her life. She saw a huge production field. The caterpillar was transporting spheres that were about 3 meters in diameter. Within the spheres, there were bodies that were in the process of development. Some were just embryos, and some had grown into the appearance of children. There were even some that had completely grown up. This is D. Isabel walked closer subconsciously and looked at the bodies in the dense spheres. She said in a trembling voice, they are all. Then there was a dead silence. Only the sound of the caterpillar tracks could be heard rhythmically. At this moment, a lazy voice suddenly came from behind everyone. The moment this voice sounded, Lady Nan was instinctively startled. Oh, Gaia, why are you so naughty? Didn't we agree that you're not allowed to enter my royal brother's research room? If you break the agreement, you'll be slapped. It's him. It's the voice of Prince Desolate. Nan Xiaonan looked back subconsciously. At the door, a figure slowly appeared. But at this moment, everything in front of her was instantly broken. Under their feet, a huge whirlpool appeared and sucked them in instantly. This time it was real. Nan Xiaonan suddenly had such an idea. This whirlpool was the channel to the next page world. Could it be that this is the true ending? Whoosh! Nan Xiaonan rushed out of the thick, ice-cold snow, gasping for air. In front of her was a world of boundless white snow. In the distant snow-capped mountains, she could vaguely see a huge and majestic capital city. Puff, puff, puff. At the same time, figures fell from the sky and directly plunged into the thick snow. Nan Xiaonan heaved a sigh of relief. They were all here. No one was missing. In the sky, 4 elves were pulling a sleigh as they flew past quickly. Sitting on the sleigh was a white-bearded man in red clothes. Suddenly, the sleigh slowly landed. It seemed that it had found everyone on the snow. The sound of bells sounded as the sleigh moved. Finally, the sleigh landed on the snow. The white-bearded man in red clothes was curiously looking at the people who climbed out of the snow. Who are you? The white-bearded old man asked curiously. We are OIC. The white-bearded old man suddenly said. You are also guests who came to attend the wedding of the prince of the Spring Kingdom and the princess of the Chilly Winter Kingdom, right? Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS. As usual, this chapter ends. Chapter 23:15. On the white snowfield, a sleigh was speeding along. A group of people were sitting on the sleigh, talking to an old man with a white beard. Of course, they didn't know what a wedding banquet was, let alone the kingdom of early spring and the kingdom of winter. Isabel found it hard to imagine that she had come to another world, until she asked the old man with a white beard if he had heard of La Puta, if he knew about God's blessed church, and if there were vampires in this world. Vampires? Is there really such a creature? I always thought that it was just a legend used to scare disobedient children. The old man with a white beard showed a surprised expression. He called himself Nicholas, and his duty was to give the first New Year's gift to the children of the kingdom of winter on the first day of the new year every year. Lady Nan frowned when she heard this. Listening to the sound of the bells when the sleigh moved, she felt that there should be a song here. Why could the elk talk? How did the sleigh fly so high? Why did the old man with a white beard sneak into the sleeping child's room? Why did every family rush to buy socks on the last day of the year? They didn't even let go of the black silk socks that were not warm, because this was a world of magic. Legend had it that the queen of the kingdom of winter was a beauty who had terrifying magic power and was good at using snow magic. When the sleigh left the snowfield, Nan Xiaonan and the others had a rough understanding of this world. They also had new identities under the suspicion of Nicholas. Travelers who didn't return in the snow. Oh, so you're lost. Nicholas nodded. You're so lucky. If it weren't for the rest period of the ice storm that occurs once in 100 years, I'm afraid you would have frozen to death in the ice storm. It's so nice to meet you, Mr. Nicholas. Miss Nan's face was full of gratitude. Essex and Isabel were watching Yulia's performance in silence. In his impression, was Yulia the type to have such strong social skills? No. Yulia was the holy maiden candidate, and she was also the most popular candidate. No matter if it was in terms of manners, she was impeccable. It was only natural that she would have excellent social skills, which wasn't strange at all. The strange thing was this, Yulia. However, time could change a person, let alone in a strange environment. Essex had been squatting in the city of God's protection for more than 10 years, and he had once lost himself. At this moment, Essex and Isabel were at a loss of what to do. In the end, they simply left the communication work to Yulia. Not long after, the sleigh landed on the top of a snowy mountain. This was where Nicholas lived. Even in the land of winter, it was the northernmost and coldest place. It was said that Nicholas had gone out to look for materials to prepare a wedding gift for the princess and prince. Mr. Nicholas, can we go to the wedding? Of course. The old man smiled kindly and said, This is the most celebratory day between the two countries. How can we not welcome you? Wait for me to prepare the gift. Then come with me to the city of winter. I will introduce Her Majesty the Queen to you. Lady Nan suddenly said in disbelief, Queen, is it so easy to meet her? Nicholas smiled and said, The Queen is also a human. Why can't we meet her? She is not a man-eating monster. Don't worry, Her Majesty the Queen is a very friendly person. Lady Nan pondered and said, Mr. Nicholas, are you familiar with the Queen? Of course. I still remember her. She was such a lovely child. Nicholas smiled and said, When I was young, I also gave her gifts. When you were young, what about when you grew up? Nicholas said, Of course, I didn't give her gifts when she grew up. If adults also want to prepare gifts, I only have so much time in a year. I can't prepare it at all. It seemed to make sense, but it felt wrong. So, how long has it been since you last saw the Queen of Winter? Nicholas thought for a while and said sadly, When she was 9 years old, she didn't believe in my existence. Believe? Nan Xiaonan subconsciously glanced at Madanzo. This was a habit she had developed after experiencing many page worlds. But this time, Madanzo didn't look at her. She just stood alone on the snowy peak, looking into the distance, thinking about life. Perhaps the incident with Pope Elohim had brought too much of shock to her, so she hadn't recovered yet. Come, you must be hungry. Come and eat something. At this time, Nicholas called everyone to a table that was directly cut open by a pine tree. After waving his hand, hot soup, bread, and other food appeared on the table. This gave everyone an illusion, as if Nicholas was using myriad element. However, this was magic. In this world, Magic seemed to be more than just an elemental power, but the ability to do whatever one wanted. Of course, doing whatever one wanted was a bit exaggerated, but could do a lot of things. In Madanzo's opinion, the energy level was very low, but it was close to the rules. In this world of winter, she recovered part of her holy light power. Lady Nin could also use star creation. The special skill of Onyx Soul was also restored. She felt that she could surf again. However, Asax was still a vampire. K-Air Lily also had the constitution of a vampire because she was bitten by him, but she had not completely transformed. Only Isabel and Aaron were left in the state of ordinary people. Isabel's temporary power from D had disappeared when she fell into the pool of the mother coral tree. So Isabel and Aaron were really weak and helpless at this time. By the way, Sir Nicholas, what is the name of the Princess of Winter? Lady Nin asked casually at this time. Snow White. Nicholas smiled and said, This is a child who was born with the blessings of the whole country. I also gave her a gift last year. Snow White what? Lady Nin looked up suddenly. Snow White? Is there a problem? Nicholas looked at her in confusion. Lady Nin frowned at this time. Isn't this the page world about Santa Claus's story? She couldn't help but ask tentatively. Then, this Snow White, is there 7 dwarfs around her? 7 dwarfs? Nicholas showed a stunned expression and frowned. How can there be 7 dwarfs around Snow White? The 7 dwarfs are the minions of the evil princess. Eldest princess is? Miss Nin suddenly had a look of understanding. She knew that Book of Gaia had never done anything serious. Nicholas muttered at this time. That's a name that shouldn't be mentioned. Princess Grand used vicious witchcraft more than 10 years ago to kill the king and hang her fiancé, causing the entire chilly winter kingdom to fall into panic. Sigh. Since then, no one dares to mention the name of Princess Grand. Nan Xiaonan shrugged her shoulders. She had long been prepared to continue asking questions. She had seen too many old men like this who knew a lot, but still pretended to be mysterious and evasive. But if you really want to know, it's not impossible. Nicholas said at this time, Princess Gaia hasn't appeared for so many years. It doesn't matter if this name is mentioned or not. Damn you. Princess Gaia's name is Princess Yu Yi. Uncle Nicholas looked calm, but don't tell others that I told you. Miss Yulia, what's wrong with you? Miss Yulia? Yulia suddenly fell to the ground, motionless. No matter how they shook her, they couldn't wake her up. Strange, how can this be? Nicholas couldn't help showing a hint of doubt. She looks a bit like she is cursed. You, send her to the house first. I'll think of a way. The night in the snowfield was particularly cold. Nicholas's house was big enough. Even if a lot of guests came at once, there were enough rooms to accommodate them. They returned to their rooms and didn't come out at night. They were probably digesting what happened in the past 2 days. The moonlight shone on Nan Xiaonan's face. Only Madanzo was sitting in front of her window. At this time, Madanzo looked at Nan Xiaonan on the bed blankly and said, I say, is it enough? How long are you going to pretend? There was no response. Metatro rolled his eyes and grabbed her, giving her 2 tight slaps across her face. However, when the slap was about to touch Nan Xiaonan, it went straight through her face. What's the matter? Madanzo let go of her hand angrily. Why did you suddenly pretend to be unconscious during dinner? Nan Xiaonan was crying at this time. Senpai, I may really die. Madanzo frowned and looked at the woman in front of her suspiciously. I won't go to the capital of cold winter. Nan Xiaonan hugged the pillow tightly. I won't go even if you kill me. Because... Princess Gaia? Madanzo couldn't help but ponder. Nan Xiaonan pretended to be unconscious after Nicholas said the name of the princess. Yi princess? Who exactly is she to make you so scared? Nan Xiaonan opened her mouth and hugged the pillow tighter. My boss's wife? Who else could it be? All the black souls are managed by her. Why do you think I'm scared? Madanzo's frown deepened. Nan Xiaonan said, You're not wrong, it's her. Asash's saint ancestor. The one that was sold by your heavenly state. Is that so? Madanzo just nodded and didn't look too shocked. Even if you're the manager of Black Souls, you didn't do anything wrong. What are you afraid of? I know the person you're talking about. She's not that kind of unreasonable woman. Sometimes, her principles are comparable to the rules. That's because you haven't seen her when she's jealous, haven't seen the devil's face behind her, haven't seen her tearing other people's faces to the ground. God knows. There are so many page worlds here. Did anyone know what she did in those page worlds? Every time she was uncontrollably teased by her boss's image in the page worlds, she was always scared witless. Anyway, even if you beat me to death, I won't go. I won't go either. Nan Xiaonan clenched her teeth and said, "At least before I'm ready." Madanzo rolled her eyes and raised her palm. A huge force instantly pressed Nan Xiaonan onto the bed. "Beat her to death." "Damn you," Madanzo directly said. "Okay, stop fooling around. I'm acquainted with Joan of Arc. If you really can't do it, I'll plead for you, okay?" "Oh." Lady Nin blinked, and her body that was slapped into a paste instantly recovered. She said incredulously, "You are acquainted? Otherwise, do you think I spent so many years in Kingdom of Heaven for nothing?" Madanzo sighed. "Although I don't know why you are so afraid of her, since she exists in the chilly winter kingdom. Isn't this good news?" "Indeed." Lady Nin pondered for a while and said with a wry smile, "I just didn't expect that in the plot of the chilly winter kingdom, Miss Yi is actually the evil princess who almost destroyed the chilly winter kingdom. This is really, I don't know how she endured it. The eldest princess committed treason, but the empress ascended the throne and became the new queen. The empress is also the king's second wife. No matter how you look at this plot, it's the empress who is causing trouble. Could it be that Miss Yi also encountered some trouble here? So we have to go to the city of chilly winter even more." Madanzo said seriously, "Solve the doubts in your heart. You really have an acquaintance with Miss Yi?" Nan Xiaonan asked hesitantly. "Of course. We are friends of life and death." Madanzo puffed up her chest at this time. "We have conquered thousands of worlds together. We drank tea with Baldy on the Western Spirit Mountain. We went to the Lingxiao Hall and ate peaches. Our friendship is forged through real battles. You also said that you are the 11th of Onyx Soul." Nan Xiaonan sneered. Madanzo suddenly said at this time, "I am really the 11th of Beginning." "You?" Madanzo said indifferently, "Let's leave tomorrow. City of chilly winter in the ice and snow palace." The queen of chilly winter walked in the palace expressionlessly, and the maids behind her followed carefully. "Okay, you all can leave. Don't disturb me without my order." "Yes." The maids quickly retreated. Her Majesty the Queen didn't seem to be in a good mood these 2 days. Maybe it was because Her Highness the Princess was about to get married, and, as a mother, her mood was complicated. No one dared to ask this question. In these 2 days, because of her bad mood, Her Majesty the Queen had directly frozen 2 batches of maids into ice sculptures. At this time, the Queen of Chilly Winter slowly pushed open the door of the study and gently closed it. In the study, there was a blonde woman in black sitting with her hands on her cheeks. A touch of hatred and anger flashed in the eyes of the Queen of Chilly Winter, but she still took a deep breath and calmed down her emotions. She slowly walked to the front of the desk. The blonde woman in black said indifferently, "What's the matter?" There's a list of names for the wedding banquet. I want you to have a look." The Queen of Chilly Winter suppressed the anger in her heart and said calmly, "You said that about Snow White's wedding, no matter how big or small? I have to ask you first, I see. Put it down." The blonde woman in black said indifferently, "If there is nothing else, please leave." The Queen of Chilly Winter nodded and walked out of the study quickly. She did not want to stay here for even a moment. She was so humble and respectful in front of the enemy who had destroyed the entire Celtic god system. ######PS 7/11. End of this chapter. Chapter 23:16. Winter Royal City, Snow Castle, a few elk, and a sleigh. After waiting for a long time, the old man with a white beard hurriedly returned to the crowd with an apologetic look. "You don't want to see him?" Miss Nin looked surprised. The speed of the sleigh was very fast. After all, in the world of magic, it only took one morning to go from the snow peak where Nicholas lived to the Winter Royal City. "Yeah, Nicholas sighed. Maybe because of the wedding preparations, Her Majesty the Queen has too many things to deal with, so she won't receive guests for the time being. What did this old man say to the guards just now? He said directly that he was Nicholas from the Great Snow Mountain and wanted to introduce a few foreigners to Her Majesty the Queen. Then he was kicked out by the guards. The old man also said sadly that he had given gifts to these guards when they were young. The old man in red during the New Year? Isn't this a story to deceive children? Let's go. They didn't have to see the Queen. For Nan Xiaonan and Madanzo, who had many experiences in the page world, the key was how to see the ending of the story. According to Madanzo's understanding in the last page world, any behavior that would affect the ending of the story was not desirable. It was necessary to restore the original result of the page to the greatest extent in order to piece together the original truth described by the Book of Gaia. At this time, in this magic kingdom, the two of them had recovered most of their abilities. It was not difficult to enter and leave the Snow Palace. But the problem was, even if they saw the Queen of Winter, what should they do next? The two, who had no clue, chose to wait and see. Anyway, they had now arrived at the Winter Royal City. According to the nature of the Book of Gaia, there must be a demon in every major event. The wedding of the Prince of the Spring Kingdom and the Princess of the Winter Kingdom was definitely the top event of the two kingdoms. Wait, we must be close to the center. Perhaps there will be clues soon. That was the only way. Nan Xiaonan had been much more well-behaved since she knew about the existence of the princess. She didn't dare to do anything special here. Who knew if the maid had made any special arrangements here? Essex didn't have any objections to this. If he didn't have any objections, then Kay or Lily also didn't have any objections. Isabel had some objections. She thought that they should be more proactive, but unfortunately, they were too weak. To put it bluntly, it seemed that they could only rely on Essex. After all, Arthaces was a vampire and had a certain level of self-preservation. As for Alan, he was indeed the one who set up the underground order of the entire city of God Bless. He knew how to observe the situation, so he simply went with the flow. Nicholas was here to deliver the wedding gift, but he couldn't enter the palace. He sent the wedding gift directly to the registration office and left on his sleigh. He said that he would come back because the wedding day happened to be the first day of the new year. It was also the day when he gave gifts to all the children in the chilly winter kingdom. The old man who gave the gift was even quite considerate. Before leaving, he left some travel expenses for everyone. Strange, Mr. Essex, aren't you a vampire? Why don't you seem to be affected when you travel during the day? At this time, it was the period when the ice and snow stopped in chilly winter kingdom once in 100 years. The entire chilly winter kingdom was sunny, but it was not hot. Instead, it was very cool because of the ice sculptures everywhere. I don't know. Facing Yulia's question, Mr. Essex shook his head and muttered, I always feel that the sunlight here is missing something. However, this is also good. At least it's more convenient. Yulia, should we find a place to discuss it? Essex felt that there must be a framework when so many people gathered together. They were all victims lost in the world of Book of Gaia. They were all looking for a way home. It was rare for so many people to meet, so naturally, it was not good to continue to fight alone. Nan Xiaonan thought for a while and said, There's a hotel over there. Let's temporarily use it as a place to stay. We're not familiar with this place, so I suggest that before sunset, we should each go around the king's city and inquire about it. At night, we will gather and share information. But one thing to pay attention to is to try not to have too much contact with the people here to avoid complications. In short, be careful. The proposal was quickly implemented. Kate Air Lily naturally wanted to be in a group with Essex. She didn't have much choice but to choose to be with Essex. After all, she was most familiar with Essex. The two families had been in contact since childhood. I'll go alone, Mr. Allen said indifferently at this time. Of course, if you don't trust me, you can follow me. Nan Xiaonan expressed that there was no need. Everyone thought that she was going to move together with Metatro. After all, Yulia and Metatro were very close to each other along the way. However, they didn't expect that the two of them would choose to move separately, and they were the first to leave the team. After that, Mr. Allen also left the team. After Essex pondered for a while, he took them to the hotel to settle down. Celia needs someone to take care of her. He looked at K. Lily and Isabel, who followed him. Who wants to stay? You decide, Isabel said indifferently. Essex thought for a while and said, K. Lily, please stay and take care of Celia. You're better at taking care of people. Isabel is used to being served. She can't do this kind of thing. Okay, what do you want to say to me? Along the way, Essex and Isabel walked side by side. He was too familiar with this woman. It was easy for him to guess some of her thoughts. The reason he left K. Lily behind was to create an opportunity for the two of them to be alone. After all, along the way, everyone was moving together. Some words were not suitable to be spoken in front of others. You know what I want to say? Isabel sighed slowly. Essex, you always like to ask questions when you already know the answer. You're playing dumb. I'm not as smart as you think. I can guess everything and guess correctly. Essex smiled bitterly. In this generation of the Sage family, I am the only one left. If I am gone, this family will be gone. I'm not as good as you and Lydic. Isabel only listened to those words. She sneered. Essex, you have broken the rules of our two families. The sage's confession is taboo. You recited it. Moreover, you didn't recite it. You even summoned the phantom of the sage. Essex said helplessly. In that situation, I can't do anything, can I? I can't just sit there and wait for death. Moreover, since this power of confession exists, it is for people to use. Isabel frowned and said, You should know that the words of repentance are created under inducement. What is holy glory? Holy glory is the tears of despair left by the sage in the prison. It is passed down to let us remember this humiliation. Even if she sublimated in the fire, even if she became a sage, it is just Isabel. He suddenly grabbed her arm and interrupted her agitated emotions. He stared at this woman who was as angry as a female cat and said in a deep voice, I said, in that situation, I can't do anything. To you, she is a sage. To the people of this free city, she is a sage. But to me, Essex said expressionlessly, she is just my ancestor. Since holy glory was passed down as a form of protection, then no matter how it was born, to me, it is just a power that my ancestors used to protect their descendants. I used it when I was at the end of the road. Is there anything wrong with that? Isabel's chest rose and fell crazily. She shook off Assash's hand and said coldly, It is because you have never respected the sage that you have always been unable to pray. A descendant of a sage family can only rely on a piece of trash that carefully lives by relying on the power of a crystal card. You need a piece of trash like me to protect you now, Isabel. Cousin Isabel. Essex smiled. Isabel looked as if she had eaten a dead mouse and said angrily, You are the disgrace of the Dark family. Then what are you? Essex sneered. You are just a piece of trash that eats both men and women. You rely on the halo of the sage family to do whatever you want and lose yourself to your own desires. The two of them were like needles against a weed-on, as if there were sparks flying. All right, please don't quarrel. At this moment, a white rose suddenly appeared in their line of sight. Essex and Isabel couldn't help but be startled. They saw a young girl carrying a small basket, smiling at the two of them. It is not right for good friends to quarrel. I will treat you to freshly baked butter biscuits. You can shake hands and make peace. The young girl seemed to have a natural ability to calm people's restlessness. Essex and Isabel subconsciously looked at each other and frowned. Just now, they had indeed lost control of their emotions, but now they had already calmed down. I am sorry. Essex took a deep breath. Me too. I shouldn't have scolded you. Isabel sighed. It is just that I was too anxious, especially now that I have to rely on you. It made my pride very uncomfortable. You know, I have always been very strong. All these years, I bullied you and Lydic because I wanted to prove that even if it is a woman, I will also... Something was wrong. Essex also sighed. Not being able to pray has always been a thorn in my heart. Isabel, you, Lydic, and I grew up together. I always thought that you all understood me and wouldn't bring this matter up. This really hurts me. This was not right. What did you do to me? Two Isabel and Asakes looked at the young girl, carrying a small basket in front of them with a gloomy expression. The young girl was wearing a pure white dress. She had the kind of quality that could completely calm people down with just one look. There was an incredible magical power. This is called the flower of truth. The young girl smiled and said, as long as you smell it, you will say what is in your heart. You quarreled because you didn't express your inner thoughts properly. So, if you have anything to say, you must tell each other properly. What you said just now, were those your heartfelt words? Two Asakes and Isabel suddenly looked like they had seen a ghost. Bah! But at this time, the quarrel. Obviously, they couldn't quarrel anymore. The two only felt extremely uncomfortable at this time, and even had the impulse to never see each other again. This kind of flower, called the flower of truth, was too scary. It could actually make people say what was in their heart directly. What was worse was that the two of them now found that in the streets and alleys of the Ice King city, there were many places where this kind of strange flower was planted. No wonder, when they walked in the king's city, everywhere was peaceful. Little girl, don't the people here know how to lie? Asakes covered his mouth and nose at this time and asked hesitantly. Generally, if there is no situation, they won't lie. The young girl tilted her head and said, but there are also lies. After a few days, Sister told me that some beautiful lies are also good. By the way, are you from outside? I don't think I've ever seen you before. Isabel said indifferently, there are so many people in the king's city. Isn't it normal that you haven't seen us before? Don't tell me that you know everyone in the capital. Of course. The young girl blinked her eyes. I can call out the names of everyone in the king's city, unless it's someone who came here for the first time. Big brother, big sister, what are your names? Mr. Asake said indifferently at this time. Isabel. Isabel coldly stared at this shameless guy and said with a smile, I'm Asake's Na. Little sister, what's your name? Bai Shui. She said to wait and see and try not to disturb the development of the story. How could it be? Knowing it was one thing, but being able to do it was another thing altogether. Lady Nin turned into a black fog and directly passed through the big wall of the imperial palace. She secretly told herself that she would just take a look and then leave. She wouldn't do anything and didn't care about anything. As long as she had a plan in mind, it would be fine. Otherwise, what she could do would be too restricted. Carefully, try not to be discovered. She touched something. Lady Nan's body instantly tensed up. The moment she turned around, her arm turned into a black broadsword that was more than 10 meters long and was about to slash down. She saw a ray of holy light coming at her and colliding with the black broadsword, making a poochie sound. It's you. I knew it. 2-inch UF * king. Stop together. I'll count to 123. While they were looking at each other, a huge suction force instantly sucked the two of them into the sky, and then they fell heavily. In the end, the two of them fell directly into a quiet courtyard. In the courtyard, a blonde girl in black clothes was holding a cup of black tea at this time. Long time no see, Lady Nan. The girl narrowed her eyes. And this is Metatron. Lady Nan immediately took a deep breath and didn't stand up. Instead, she directly lay flat on the ground and went offline. Madanzo also took a deep breath. Someone, bring me my log-out key. No. Drinking tea? Today's weather is so good. Drinking tea is good. Chapter 23:17. In the courtyard, full of vitality, there was no breath of winter at all. Butterflies were flying among the flowers. But Madanzo had no mood to enjoy the beautiful scenery. Nan Xiaonan was still pretending to be dead at her feet. It was as if she had fallen from the sky and fainted directly. She could sleep forever. She even raised her butt and lay face on the ground. No one would pretend to be dead without caring about her image. It's just St. Joan of Arc. What's there to be afraid of? I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. Metatron, I'm here. In the pavilion, Miss Maid slowly put down the teacup and suddenly showed a smile. I'm sorry. I haven't seen you for so long, and I have to invite you here in this way. It doesn't matter. Madanzo gave a silly smile, but she didn't move half an inch, mainly because her legs were too weak to walk. Miss Maid's beautiful eyes looked back and forth between Nan Xiaonan and her at this time. She said thoughtfully, "It seems that you and Lady Nan have a very good journey. Lady Nan, do you need me to treat you?" "I'm fine." Madame Zhou couldn't help but be startled. Nan Xiaonan had stood up at some point. She even put her hand behind her back, slightly opened her legs, raised her head, and puffed out her chest. Her voice was full of energy. "Don't stand there." Miss Maid chuckled at this time. "I made some afternoon snacks. Come and have some with me." "Okay." Madame Zhou nodded subconsciously, and then looked at Nan Xiaonan, who was standing upright. Her hands behind her back were trembling. She also looked at Madame Zhou at this time, and her eyes were chatting. "Senior, friend of life and death." Madame Zhou took a deep breath and gave her a reassuring look. The bearded dwarfs were taking out food from the house and walking into the courtyard with strange eyes at this time, while looking at the two guests who suddenly appeared here. For the 7 bearded dwarfs, the first princess had no friends. How could such an evil witch make friends? The wedding of the princes and princesses of the 2 countries was coming soon, but the eldest princess had not made any moves recently. Could it be that she was secretly planning something big, and these 2 guests were the key to it? The bearded dwarves did not know, nor did they dare to ask. After putting down the things, they respectfully retreated to the yard on the other side of the house to play in the snow. Miss Yi, who were those people just now?" Nan Xiaonan stared suspiciously in the direction in which the dwarves had left. "Have you heard the story of Snow White?" Miss Maid asked calmly. The 2 of them quickly nodded. This was probably one of the most widely spread fairy tales, not just in a single subworld, but in almost the entire dimensional crevice. According to the statistics of the Kingdom of Heaven, among all the subworlds in which the Kingdom of Heaven had spread their faith, more than 97% of them had spread this fairy tale. Of course, this was rather boring, cold knowledge. Could it be that these dwarves are? Madame Zhou could not help but open her mouth. "They're the dwarves in the legend." Miss Maid smiled slightly and said, "But here they're the pawns of the first princess who committed all kinds of evil deeds. They have done a lot of bad things." "Lady Nan, you seem to be very surprised. Don't you already know that I am the traitorous witch princess?" Nan Xiaonan took a deep breath and said seriously, "How can the Yu Yi I know have any bad intentions? There must be some misunderstanding, so after knowing this, I immediately came to Winter City to inquire about your whereabouts. It's great to see that you are fine. I, Nan Xiaonan, am loyal and righteous. Thank you for your concern. I'm fine." Miss Maid chuckled. "Lady Nan, go to the house and change your clothes. Your clothes are a little dirty." Nan Xiaonan was startled, but immediately reacted. She knew that she was deliberately sent away. This Miss Maid might have something to talk to Madame Zhou alone. She put away her suspicions, and without the slightest bit of sloppiness, she immediately turned and walked into the big house. However, she was even more curious. Could it be that these 2 really have a very deep friendship? "Metatron, it turns out that you are not dead yet." Miss Maid smiled and said, "Do you want me to kill you again?" Madame Zhou, who had just reached her claws into the plate and wanted to grab a biscuit to taste, suddenly shivered when she heard this. This was really a life-and-death friendship. Madame Zhou couldn't help but smile bitterly. "I look like a ghost now, no different from being dead. I heard that you have joined a shop. Why, are you interested in a lonely ghost like me?" Miss Maid said indifferently, "It's not up to me to decide whether I am interested in you or not." Madame Zhou was startled and frowned. "You seem to be a little different. How am I different?" Madame Zhou thought for a while and said, "It seems that you have become more restrained. Of course, this may just be my illusion. Perhaps it's because we haven't seen each other for a long time, and many things have happened." Miss Maid was silent for a while, then slowly said, "I haven't changed. This is the original me." Madame Zhou frowned and asked tentatively, "You don't hate me?" Miss Maid said expressionlessly, "The status of a sage is more like a perfect shackle for me." "Well," Madame Zhou lowered her head and pondered. After a while, she slowly raised her head and said softly, "Then I should congratulate you for letting go of all this." The kingdom of heaven will be destroyed, or it will be destroyed. Miss Maid then smiled. Isn't this even worse? Madanzo's face suddenly darkened. It sighed and said, I've already investigated the matter at that time. Although it's not the original intention of him, it's also under him as acquiescence. This kind of an action is the biggest original sin. I don't oppose any revenge against him, but only those believers in the kingdom of holy light are innocent. After all, you were willing to sacrifice because you wanted to save them. I said that the status of a sage is a perfect shackle. Miss Maid said indifferently, Now, in my opinion, even if there are 100 or 1,000 times more believers in the kingdom of heaven, it's not worth even a second of my time. Madanzo was stunned and looked at her in disbelief. She said subconsciously, Then what's worth it? Miss Maid's blue eyes were imprinted on Madanzo's body. She said softly, Metatron, my flag will only open for one person now. It's over, it's over, it's over. The worst thing happened. Madanzo took a deep breath. The village girl, named Orniang, that it knew had really become love-struck. This was the ultimate virus that had harmed countless career women in the dimensional crack. Together with the Chinibu disease, they were known as the two scourges of the void. A career woman with a love-struck brain couldn't listen to anything. Moreover, she would automatically imagine all the good things about her lover. Even if it was a pile of shit, it would smell good. No matter what bad things her lover had done, she would automatically correct them. Often, it would be accompanied by self-improvement, narcissism, self-satisfaction, self-touching symptoms, and so on. Well, do you still need a pendant for your flag? I also want to have a super career woman with a love-struck brain as a partner. Miss Maid chuckled and said, Metatron, do you want to be one of the 10,000 souls of the strong on the flag of freedom? In that case, I'll be really flattered. Madanzo shook its head. Being cheeky had never worked on this woman. Too many stubborn little geniuses had tried it. This village girl, named Orniang, to put it nicely, was persistent. To put it bluntly, she was actually a paranoid person with a personality defect. It sighed and said, Let's not talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Joan of Arc, I saw Elohim. Maybe it's Elohim in the original world. Not only did Nan Xiaonan change into a new set of clothes, she even removed Yulia's disguise and returned to her original appearance. When she estimated that it was about time and walked out of the big house, she saw Madanzo and Miss Maid sitting in the courtyard in silence. It seemed that they had not continued to talk for some time. At this time, Madanzo slowly stood up. There was nothing unusual on its face. It was very calm, so calm that it seemed a little strange. It walked towards her with a hint of curiosity in its eyes. This is your original appearance? It's not as good as Yulia, but it's pretty good. Good luck. 8 points of beauty. You mother of asterisk her. Lady Nan was about to argue with the other party, but Madanzo lowered its voice and said, I've pleaded for you. Don't worry, I still have some face. The Witch of the Academy in her child world suddenly showed a bright smile. Where are you going? Can't you see? Madanzo said directly. To avoid suspicion. Don't you understand? This is a separate interrogation. Do you understand? Didn't it say that it had pleaded for her? At the moment when Nan Xiaonan was in a daze, Madanzo had slipped directly into the big house. Lady Nan was stunned. She braced herself and walked to the pavilion in the courtyard in front of Miss Maid. Miss Maid smiled and said, I heard from Metatron that you have a good relationship with Zhu Zhu, and you've been alone with Jay for a long time. Let me think about it. And Z, I heard that you also learned the adult teaching material using Z as a reference. Well, what else? I've said it. I won't come to Winter King City, even if I'm beaten to death. I'm wrong. At this moment, the demoness of his subworld academies was crying miserably. She pinched her own ears and knelt on the ground with tears and snot running down her face. No matter who I am, young master forced me to do this. It's all because I seduced the young master. Oh, do I still have a chance? Lady Nan, really? Miss Maid chuckled softly. What did you do wrong? You're an excellent new employee. At your stage, there aren't many talents who can perform like this. Lady Nan raised her head in amazement. Miss Maid took out a handkerchief and gently wiped the tears on her face. This should be my job. Miss Maid sighed and said, but I also have my reasons for not being able to leave. It's great that Miss Nan can replace me and guard the images of Master. What's going on? You Miss Maid, you this is? Of course. I have to commend Lady Nan for your contribution. Miss Maid smiled like a real sister. So, I've decided to praise Miss Nan in the next Onyx Soul Commendation ceremony. I'll also give you an anonymous leave of absence for 100 years as a reward. Oh. Lady Nan couldn't help blinking and asked curiously, I know about the leave, but what does anonymous mean? Miss Maid said, because it's my private sponsorship, it won't go through the shop's public account. Well, it's probably equivalent to the anonymous bank cards in the human world. Then doesn't that mean anyone can use it? Nan Xiaonan's hands suddenly trembled. Anyone can use it, anyone can rob it? Miss Maid smiled slightly. Lady Nan, are you not satisfied? Well, a 100-year leave is too little. Let's increase it to a 1,000-year leave. In this way, even some senior messengers will be tempted. Well, they will also be envious. But you must keep it well. After all, I can't control the private communication between the Black Soul messengers. Lady Nan swallowed her saliva subconsciously and said in a trembling voice, How do they communicate? Of course, it's the daily communication. Miss Maid squinted. We all work for the Master. How can we kill each other? Everyone loves each other, just like a family. Miss Witch of the Subworld's academic school suddenly felt weak in her legs and fell to the ground. Commendation conference. Attendance was called on the spot. A huge reward. From now on, Nan Xiaonan, will be the biggest koi fish in the shop. Oh, Lady Nan, you're too happy. You're welcome. This is what you deserve. I'm looking forward to your future performance. Keep up the good work. Smile. Hey, newcomer, look at your red face. You must have gotten a lot of benefits. Don't thank me. In the living room of the big house, Madanzo picked up a piece of biscuit. Nan Xiaonan walked to the sofa without saying a word and knelt down directly. Madanzo blinked. Nan Xiaonan strangled her neck without saying a word and said expressionlessly, Madanzo, what kind of friend are you? We're really friends. Madanzo put on a painful mask and her face turned blue. I was almost killed by her several times. Don't you think our friendship is deep? Damn you. Nan Xiaonan looked sad and laughed wildly. Madanzo, let's die together. In this way, we're also friends. Madanzo. Oh, end of this chapter. Chapter 23:18. Basically, the things that needed to be confessed have been confessed. The rewards and punishments were also a foregone conclusion. Although she was not looking forward to the commendation ceremony in the future, she still had to live her life. Lady Nan was now a salted fish. She deeply understood the true meaning of the sentence. The end that you worked so hard to reach is just the starting point for others. Good Lord, when she and Madanzo worked hard to push the plot in the Page Worlds, Miss Maid had directly controlled the plot in the Winter World. The big Outer God boss, Morgan, was directly destroyed. Now, she was just a tool wearing the Winter Queen's disguise. After leaving the manor, Nan Xiaonan understood only one intention from Miss Maid, to let the wedding go smoothly. So, what are we going to do now? Walking out of the manor, Lady Nin couldn't help but feel a little lost. Metatro put his hands behind his head and walked leisurely. Don't do anything. Joan of Arc is the kind of person who hates it when others interfere with what she wants to do. Simply put, she can order you around, but you can't criticize her at all. TSK, the dictator of the Holy Angel Army, the Queen of Flames, and so on. There are many such nicknames. These nicknames, I'm afraid you came up with them. That's why you were beaten to death several times. Nan Xiaonan squinted and asked curiously, Back then, how did the kingdom of heaven send you out? Madanzo said indifferently, The lease of the kingdom of heaven expired. The old man was embarrassed, so he slapped his thigh and a group of filial sons and grandsons rushed to send their heads to him. After arguing for a long time, there was no conclusion. In the end, someone proposed to draw lots. Then, she was unlucky and won the prize. Is it so childish? Nanshan couldn't help but widen her eyes. That was the heavenly roar, one of the giants of the dimensional rift. It was at the top of the pyramid of the mythological faction. Although Madanzo said it lightly, Lady Nen had already figured out its character. The more disdainful it was, the more it cared about it. Otherwise, Madanzo shrugged and said, "Don't tell me you want the old man to personally send off the old man. Even God wants face, okay?" Lady Nen shook her head. "I still feel that it's too strange. Since the lease is about to expire, I don't believe that Heavenly State didn't make preparations early." "That's right," Madanzo said expressionlessly. "Every time a new lease term starts, it's already in preparation. You guys cut the leaks so easily, but how do you know the difficulties of being a leak? It wasn't easy for me to grow a little bit. I haven't even gotten used to it yet. It's about to mature again." Then Shaunen shrugged. "You still haven't told me why it's not enough." Madanzo said indifferently, "I was killed. After I died, Holy Fall appeared in the Holy Light Kingdom. One of the 7 capitals that was supposed to be under my name fell into a crisis because of Holy Fall. The collapse of faith swept through the entire Holy Light Kingdom like a plague. In order to fix all this and not shake the foundation of the Holy Light Kingdom, I had to consume a lot of willpower. What happened next? You'll understand if you think with your knees." Nanshan couldn't help but ponder. "Isn't there a traitor?" Madanzo didn't say anything, but Nanshan saw a sneer on its face. It was supposed to be the end of the lease term of the Holy Light Kingdom, but Metatron died. Then, like a chain reaction, the second saint, Saint Joan of Arc, was sacrificed as well. This was equivalent to directly cutting off 2 generals of Heavenly State, and all of this happened under her nose. Things were a little complicated. She couldn't help but start to sort out what happened after entering the Holy Light Kingdom. The death of Metatron was the origin of everything. Following that, the Holy Light Kingdom spent a lot of willpower to fix it, and Miss May joining the shop could all be seen on the spot. But things were far from over. In order to cover up the fact that the higher-ups of Heavenly State had to use a saint to repay the debt, a group of seraphim worked together to create a virtual saint position to replace the saint in the free city. As the carrier of the virtual saint position, it was an angel named Lily. However, this virtual saint, Lily, didn't seem to be satisfied with just being a substitute. She actually secretly colluded with the outer god, Kerrigan, who had awakened in the Holy Light Kingdom. They faked the death of the saint and forced the seraphim to launch the resurrection ceremony on the day of suffering of the saint. Holy water was prepared for this resurrection ceremony. The purpose was to allow Kerrigan to successfully steal the new saint position and start his revenge on Heavenly State. Lily was behind all of this. She even gave the Book of Gaia to Kerrigan. The question was, why did Lily take a big detour, fake her own death, and then send Kerrigan to the same position? Nanshan had experienced the horror of the Book of Gaia too much. She didn't think that a virtual saint created by a group of seraphim had enough ability to obtain the Book of Gaia. Nanshan made a question here. As for the Black Joan incident that happened in Domremy Village in the painting world, it had little to do with Lily's plan. It was because the Archangel secretly planned to use the yearning of the saint's father to create another Jeanne d'Arc. But there was also a possibility. That was, Lily might have noticed the Archangel's arrangement. She, who was originally not satisfied with just being a puppet-like virtual saint, finally decided to become a traitor after learning about this matter. "So why did you die?" Nanshan pointed the final source to Madanzo. "If you didn't die, there wouldn't be so much trouble, right?" Madanzo suddenly opened her mouth and pointed at herself. She said in disbelief, "So, even living and breathing is a sin? Is it so difficult for me? Then do you know who killed you?" Nanshan asked with her hands on her hips and her head lowered. Only Madanzo answered her with a wry smile. "Then how did you die?" Nanshan frowned. "That day I was sleeping." Madanzo thought for a while and said, "Then?" Nanshan held her breath for fear of missing any details. "And then I died," Yizichin said. Madanzo spread out her hands. "After waking up, My consciousness was already in the interlayer of the destiny system. You deserve to die. Madanzo smiled bitterly and nodded. You deserve to die. You don't have anyone to suspect? Nan Xiaonan didn't give up and asked, maybe you think too much. Think simply, after you die, who is the biggest beneficiary? If I die, it must be the biggest loss of heaven. Who can benefit? Maybe the one who benefits is not someone inside heaven, but someone outside of heaven. Madanzo shook her head. The void giants have already divided their territories. They haven't even finished exploring their own territories. How can they have the energy to do this? You have also walked in the void before. It's not like you don't know that it is far from reaching the limit of development. Have you conquered all the multiple subworlds? Have you broken through the deep space forbidden zone? Nan Xiaonan thought for a while and said coldly, he should be omniscient and omnipotent in heaven, right? He didn't say anything. Madanzo's face turned cold. That old man has been pretending to be dead. Nan Xiaonan suddenly patted Madanzo's head and smiled. Don't think about it. I know a way to let people know the truth. What way? Madanzo was stunned. Find my boss. Lady Nan's eyes lit up. For the sake of our precious friendship, I can put in a few good words for you to my boss. Maybe I can even give you a discount. Then the results will be yours, right? Madanzo sneered. If I make a deal and you complete my list, how long can you take off? Nan Xiaonan was stunned. This guy is too familiar with Black Soul. But if Madanzo is really the 11th beginning, why didn't she mention this when she met with Miss Maid just now? As the Black Soul's chief manager, how can she not know who is the Black Soul envoy? Do you want to know my real identity? No. Nan Xiaonan responded and walked out quickly because she saw Asakes and Isabel on the way. Yulia, do you know we met on the way? Snow White. Nan Xiaonan was surprised. Mr. Arthesis had already briefly explained what had happened. You might not believe it, but she really is a princess. And for a princess to travel without a single guard, those who don't know would think that she's just an ordinary little girl. What danger could Snow White be in? If there was any danger, it would be directly strangled in the initial stage. The entire chilly winter royal city was being watched by Miss Maid at this time. Why? You don't seem to be curious. Isabel couldn't help frowning. Nan Xiaonan had a headache. When she left the manor, Miss Maid clearly said that she shouldn't let these two know her existence. She always felt that Miss Maid's expression at that time was a face of disgust. Curious? How can I not be curious? Nan Xiaonan muttered. But this Snow White's wedding is imminent. Why didn't she stay in the palace to prepare? Why did she run out alone? Asakes shook his head with a wry smile. She said that she was going out to buy ingredients for dinner. Isabel and I followed her all the way and found that this Snow White really knew everyone in the chilly winter royal city. What's incredible is that everyone here seems to like this princess from the bottom of their hearts. Not to mention danger. No one even approached her with even a little bit of malice. How should I say it? There is something very special about this princess. Special? Madanzo frowned slightly. Looking at her is like looking at the embodiment of everything beautiful. Mr. Asakes smiled bitterly, the kind that will make people feel ashamed. How did you separate later? Nan Xiaonan asked directly. She wasn't curious about anything about Snow White. This was under the protection of Miss Maid. Even if it was a flying pig, she wasn't curious. After she finished shopping, she went back directly. Arthas sighed. I feel like I've walked into a fairy tale world. Everything here is unbelievably simple. Do you have this feeling? Lady Nan shook her head. Let's go back to the hotel first. It's almost time to assemble. Manor. A girl in white quietly poked her head out from the pillar and quietly looked at the woman in black in the courtyard. She was very curious. Snow White, since you are here, why don't you come over? The girl in white let out a silly laugh, stuck out her little tongue, lifted her skirt, and trotted into the pavilion. She liked this sister more and more. Didn't you say that you will stay in the palace with your mother these 2 days? Miss Maid asked with a smile. Why are you here again? Mother is very busy these days. I have looked for her several times, but she has no time to care about me. The girl said softly. The servants in the palace have been discussing the wedding these 2 days. I'm a bit annoyed, so I ran out. Sister Huang, I will cook dinner for you tonight. Okay? I have prepared the ingredients. Miss Maid said softly. You don't like this wedding? The girl leaned on the table, and her whole face seemed to be melting. It seems that I don't dislike it, but I don't reject it either. I always feel that it is a bit unreal. Sister, do you know, I don't even know what the Prince of the Country of Spring looks like. He must be a very good person. Miss Maid said with a smile. How do you know? The girl asked curiously. Sister, have you seen the Prince of the Country of Spring? What does he look like? I heard that he is a very gentle person. Is it true? Of course. Miss Maid smiled and stroked the girl's cheek, saying softly, in this world, no one will be more gentle to you than him. Well, the girl was thoughtful and immediately showed a distressed look. Sister, can I ask you for a favor? As long as I can do it. The girl's eyes brightened and directly held Miss Maid's hands, saying expectantly, Sister, on the wedding day, can you come to be my bridesmaid? Miss Maid was stunned, which was rare. How should she put it? Even if she was the master's sister, even in this absurd plot, it was already her limit to allow this wedding to exist and go on. Only this, I'm afraid I can't. She shook her head and apologized. She didn't even intend to give a reason. Why? The girl showed a trace of disappointment. At this time, Miss Maid said indifferently, I don't want anyone to appear by my side as the best man. No matter what the situation is, I won't allow it. At this moment, if I'm the best man, can I? In the courtyard, a soft voice slowly sounded. Miss Maid couldn't help but turn around. In the courtyard, there was someone standing under the eaves. Chapter 23:19. As he stood there, the snow fairies seemed to have quieted down. The eyes of the little princess of chilly winter lit up. She was one of the lucky ones who could see the snow fairies hidden in the atmosphere. The fairies were like her guardians, always sending her all kinds of information. It was said that the Prince of the Country of Spring was also a person who could make the fairies in the atmosphere like. Although the little princess of chilly winter had never seen the Prince of the Country of Spring, just based on this point, she was already looking forward to it. It turned out that, other than herself, other than the Prince of the Country of Spring whom she had never met, there was another person who could make the fairies like him. Elder sister, who is he? The little princess came back to her senses and asked in a low voice. The man under the eaves was wearing a white fox mask at this time, making people even more curious about his identity. A person who is very important to me. She had never seen such a touching expression from this noble and mysterious elder sister of hers. In the eyes of the little princess, her elder sister's whole world seemed to have changed. Her elder sister was very good to her, gentle and meticulous, but at the same time, she made the fairies not dare to approach her. Those were the snow fairies, and the cold could not make them afraid. At this time, the fairies seemed to be cheering. The air was filled with joy, and the little princess could easily feel the arrival of spring. The low-hanging roses in the courtyard seemed to be fuller in an instant. Then, the little princess saw an unforgettable scene. Under the scorching sun of the ice day, her elder sister directly threw herself into the arms of the man wearing the fox mask. They whispered something, but the breeze could not reach them. The fairies who wanted to eavesdrop pricked up their ears, but they could only hear the sound of the wind. The little princess of chilly winter tilted her head. Her elder sister and a mysterious man walked towards her. Hello, Your Highness. Hello. The little princess subconsciously raised her head and instinctively said, Can I take off your mask? If you take it off, I will disappear, he said softly. The little princess's heart seemed to be filled with a huge sense of loss. She quickly waved her hand and said, I'm sorry. This is the first time we meet, and I made such an unreasonable request. You are the most important person to my elder sister. If you disappear, I will blame myself. Do you really want to see it? He whispered again. The little princess subconsciously glanced at her elder sister who was standing quietly at the side, but her elder sister only had eyes for him. The little princess bit her lip and finally shook her head forcefully. Suddenly, a warm palm caressed the little princess's cheek. Her body trembled slightly as the warm palm covered her eyes. He held her hand with his other hand, and she quickly found the fox mask. Under his guidance, she hesitantly took off the mask. She couldn't see anything and could only touch it with her fingers. What kind of face was that? Eyes, nose bridge, lips. Time passed just like that. No one knew how fast or slow it was. When the little princess turned around, the radiance of the winter sun made it difficult for her to open her eyes. She only felt that her cheeks were a little hot. The man had already put the fox mask back on. "I'm sorry. I still have some matters to attend to. I'll head back to the palace first." At this moment, the little princess held her face in her hands and ran out of the courtyard as if she was escaping. She even forgot to take the basket containing the ingredients. "Master, aren't you afraid of scaring her?" It was Miss Servant Girl's voice. Boss Luo chuckled and said, "After all, she wrote so many mischievous thoughts. A little revenge is nothing. But this wedding—" Miss Servant Girl wanted to say something, but stopped. Boss Luo opened his palm, and a golden page formed in his palm. He then sent it to Miss Servant Girl. Miss Servant Girl's blue eyes glanced at the page, but she chuckled and said, "I see. Have you found out anything about Kerrigan?" The boss sat down at this moment. Miss Servant Girl said, "Most of the promises should be found on Lily, if you are in a hurry to find it. Lily is currently in the last page of the book." Boss Luo shook his head. "That's the last stop. I'll do it myself. This is the rubbing of the Book of Gaia." As he spoke, the owner flipped his palm again, and a phantom diary with a few real pages was presented in front of the servant girl. He said again, "Take a look. Where should this page be placed?" Miss Servant Girl heard that and began to turn the pages. Not only the real pages had records, but also the virtual pages had descriptions. This should be the complete rubbing of the Book of Gaia. She looked at it very slowly and very carefully. Unknowingly, the afterglow had appeared, and the snow-white courtyard was dyed orange-red. Miss Servant Girl suddenly put the page in her hand between two pages of the Book of Gaia. "It should be here. But why? You should be able to figure out." Miss Servant Girl muttered, "This diary was written by two people, especially the last few pages, which will be more obvious. But who wrote it? If I'm not wrong," Boss Luo said indifferently, "it should be famine." Miss Servant Girl narrowed her eyes at this time, and her voice was slightly cold. The seed of universal or mother was actually used by Master. That's all in the past. Boss Luo shook his head. "I don't have a feeling of dislike in my heart. Of course I don't like it. As for famine, I've met it if I can. What I can still care about is the people I've met now. These things, I'm beginning to feel that I'm actually created, an ideal state created by the Creator. Even the previous owner might have fallen into this trap unknowingly." Miss Servant Girl's face changed slightly. She would never allow anyone to plot against her master in any situation. Boss Luo stroked her lips and said, "Although I know these, it doesn't affect me now. The root is always higher than anything else. So, even if I know these, it doesn't cause any harm other than making me feel a little uncomfortable. I've seen the Emperor in the pages that recorded the Holy Land. I feel like I've seen a father who likes to play pranks, tell lame jokes, and try hard to show off in front of his children. As for me, now I'm just standing in a position that I've abandoned." "Master," Miss Servant Girl wanted to say something, but stopped. Boss Luo pulled her into his arms and whispered, "And compared to these useless things, I'm more eager to stand by your side as a groomsman." The dusk in chilly winter city seemed to be longer than before. It was just that people would unconsciously be immersed in the afterglow of the sunset. It was infinitely beautiful. Who would care about it? There was too much time. Work. In the restaurant of the hotel, Mr. Essex looked at Yulia with some surprise. The word work was too far away from him. He was the Rose Countess who had been lying flat for 15 years. It was impossible for him to work. "We have no money." Lady Nan shrugged and said, "I'm talking about the currency of this place. The money left by Grandpa Nicholas is only enough for me to buy a room for one night." Everyone looked at each other. They had never thought about the problem of money, but this seemed to be a real problem. This was a magic country. Almost everyone could use one or two small spells. Essex and Isabel had seen it more than once when they were strolling in the capital in the afternoon. For example, The auntie who carried the child directly created an ice ladder to climb up. For example, the naughty child used ice and snow magic to create a snowman. No one dared to eat and dash here because the owner himself was a tyrant. It was said that he was a retired former royal mage. The whole street was filled with retired national mages and soldiers of the chilly winter army. Because of the existence of the century-old ice and snowstorm, the former mages and soldiers who had retired early had no place to go, so they simply stayed in the capital to reproduce. Over time, it became the current capital where every family had some special skills. How are we going to find a job? Essex quickly accepted this uncomfortable fact. Lady Nan said, because of the wedding, the whole city needs to be decorated. At present, the palace is recruiting temporary workers for the decoration. I have already taken some forms. Everyone can fill them in. You could go to work tomorrow. Isabel took out a form and looked at it. She frowned and said, Dawn Winery? Not just anyone can answer the call. Miss Nan said unhurriedly, the palace will only accept people who have been recommended by others. This Dawn Winery supplies more than 70% of the wine in the entire chilly winter kingdom. It is an absolutely high-quality recommended unit. Miss Yulia, how did you get these? Kate Air Lily asked in surprise. She and Senior Yulia recognized each other in the last page world. Until the current chilly winter page world, they had experienced 3 different page worlds together. Naturally, they were more familiar with each other. Lady Nin shrugged and said, It's nothing. I just found the owner of this winery and provided him with some modern winemaking technology in the Free City. The other party was immediately shocked and tried to curry favor with him. Essex couldn't help but be stunned and subconsciously said, What kind of third-rate transmigration plot is this? We are also transmigrating now. Lady Nin smiled slightly. Then wouldn't it be better for you to use your skills to pay back the money? Isabel said with a sneer. Lady Nin said indifferently, Money may not be able to buy identity. Fill in this form, and we will be official employees of the Dawn Winery. With this identity, you would have a legitimate reason to stay in the royal city. Are there any other questions? No problem. Everyone, fill it up quickly. I have a question. Essex said sternly. Who can tell me why Mr. Allen hasn't returned yet? Allen, who claimed to be the victim who was unfortunately affected in the Holy Maiden ceremony and entered the Book of Gaia. After they split up, there was no more information. Don't worry, he is still in the capital. Lady Nan said indifferently. Don't worry about him for now. Why are you so sure? Isabel asked doubtfully. Yulia, is there something you haven't told us? Nan Xiaonan said indifferently. Teacher Isabel, I've experienced several different worlds, and I've also learned some things. I'm very different from the Yulia you taught me in the past. Isabel's frown deepened, but she did not ask further. After everyone took the form, they returned to their rooms. When Madame Zhou finally left, she suddenly asked Nan Xiaonan, Xing Chuang, Button. Nan Xiaonan nodded gently. How could she be at ease letting Mr. Allen act alone? Long before he left, this King Go of the Dimensional Rift had quietly tampered with the buttons of Mr. Allen's clothes. Night. When the shift was handed over, the soldier said hello and left his companions. He trotted to the side alley to solve the problem. The young man in front. In the dark alley, a hand reached out and waved at the soldier. Who? The soldier suddenly shuddered and subconsciously pulled out his long sword. He stared at the depths of the alley with rapt attention. The soldier was actually a little nervous. This was because the snowstorm was like a natural barrier. Although it trapped frigid winter, it also protected frigid winter at the same time. It wasn't a joke that frigid winter had no battles. The soldier also trained every day, but it was not to protect the country, but as a job. In the entire Winter Kingdom, the most tense moment in hundreds of years was probably before the birth of the little princess, the horror brought by the treason of the eldest princess. But it was only once. Come out, the soldier shouted in a deep voice. I sprained my ankle. It's inconvenient for me to move. Can you come and help me? The soldier frowned, raised the oil lamp in his hand, and slowly approached. When he got closer, he saw a long-haired woman sitting on the ground, pinching her ankle with one hand. The woman had long hair and lowered her head, almost covering her face. "Are you okay?" The soldier lowered his guard. There was no war in winter, and the people of winter were simple. In this fairy tale-like beautiful country, the soldier didn't think much. He quickly walked to the woman and reached out to help her up. He subconsciously looked at the woman's face, wanting to see her clearly. "Thank you so much." The woman slowly raised her head. "You're welcome." The soldier smiled slightly, but his smile froze at this moment. After the woman raised her head, what the soldier saw was a face exactly the same as his. "You." A sharp pain spread in the soldier's chest. He was pushed directly to the wall and covered his mouth. He could only stare with his eyes wide open until he couldn't feel the pain. He could no longer feel the slightest bit of this world. "Stanley, why were you gone for so long?" His companion's voice came impatiently from outside. "Sorry, I'll be right there." A soldier ran out hurriedly with his pants up. Perhaps because he ran too fast, his pants weren't fastened properly, and he fell directly to the ground. The soldiers on duty couldn't help but laugh. The soldier named Stanley scratched his head and stood up with a silly smile. "This road is too slippery." Chapter 23:20. From today onwards, it was time to work. Essex yawned, Isabel yawned, Kate or Lily yawned, Madanzo yawned, and Lady Nan yawned. The task they got from the Wedding Command Center was to go to the central area and decorate the fountain. If the work is not completed within the specified time, there will be no food. "Kate or Lily, come on. You are the best child." "Don't worry, Mr. Essex. I will work hard for your share." This was the reason why Mr. Essex felt relieved after reaching his goal. He was a vampire. It was not suitable for him to work under the sun, so he just lay lazily in the shade under the tree. "You don't have to spoil him." Isabel shook her head and said to Kay or Lily. The little maid in the mansion just smiled and said, "In the past, Mr. Essex was also such a loser. When he helped in the mansion, the more he helped, the more troublesome it was. It was not as convenient as working alone. It was good now. It was like returning to that time." "What happened over there?" Isabel suddenly looked ahead. At this time, on the street not far away, a group of passers-by and some soldiers of the chilly winter kingdom gathered. The crowd of onlookers seemed to be getting more and more. Nan Xiaonan and Madanzo were already mixed in the crowd at this time. In the alley, a male body was found. "Get out of the way. There's nothing to see. It's just a drunk, unlucky guy who froze to death." The soldiers were dispersing the crowd. Even so, the murder case still brought a lot of impact to this peaceful capital. Here, since the birth of the little princess more than 10 years ago, there had been no cases of unnatural death. People almost forgot that people could get drunk and freeze to death. What a joke. This was the capital of chilly winter. Even the brats grew up in ice and snow. People of chilly winter would freeze to death on the streets. Lady Nan and Madanzo were not the only ones who didn't believe it. The locals were also skeptical. This skepticism was because they were used to telling the truth. But this time, the soldier who dealt with the corpse was obviously lying. Or rather, he was deliberately hiding something. Otherwise, when the corpse was carried out, it shouldn't have been covered with a cloth. Instead, it should have been sent to a carriage with a canopy. The place where the corpses were transported and placed seemed to have been closed for a long time. There was only one person working there, an old man who was about to retire. After the body was sent to the morgue, there were only a few soldiers guarding it. As for how to deal with it, it still needed to be reported to the higher-ups. The main thing was that things were not that simple. The deceased was obviously not drunk or frozen to death, but had been killed. This was probably a rather vile case of murder. The case was being sent to the palace at the fastest speed. "Is there any sound inside?" "Is there?" "No, right? Aren't we guarding the door?" "That's right." In the morgue, Nan Xiaonan and Madanzo were frowning. The cloth covering the corpse had been lifted, and what they saw was a headless male corpse. A simple headless corpse would not make them frown. What made them feel strange was that the headless male corpse was wearing the clothes of Mr. Allen, who had been missing for a whole night. At this time, Nan Xiaonan silently tore off a button on her clothes, placed it in the palm of her hand, and said in a low voice, "Tell me, what happened?" She didn't care that Alan didn't come back for a whole night. because she had secretly touched the buttons on his clothes. Therefore, she could always feel the existence of the buttons and knew that Alan had been in the capital all the time. But when she woke up in the morning, she found that the buttons had not been moved for a long time. She had been suspicious for a long time. An ordinary button, no matter how Xing Chuang was just a button. Besides, Nan Xiaonan didn't intend to let this button do anything earth-shattering. Therefore, Xing Chuang's method was simply to give it some intelligence, mainly used for recording. In fact, it was not much different from a tracker. The young man in front. Who? Come out. I sprained my ankle, and it's inconvenient for me to move. Can you come over and help me? The undulating sound came from the button. This was the more useful information recorded by the button. The rest were basically the discussions of the soldiers when the bodies were transported. After listening to the retelling of the button, Nan Xiaonan and Madanzo looked at each other and quickly thought of the truth. The murderer was Alan, and he cut off the head of the deceased to confuse them. The key was that they didn't know the true identity of the headless body. Alan, why did you do this to avoid us? Nan Xiaonan looked at Madanzo subconsciously. Where's your pipe? There was a headless murder case in the capital. The young boy once again held the pipe without tobacco in his mouth, and the smell came out immediately. There's only one truth. What is it? I don't know yet. You mother of asterisk cur. Miss Nan punched him in the head without saying a word. Since they exposed each other's identities, Lady Nan became more and more unscrupulous towards this former clerk of the Kingdom of Heaven. Anyway, there was still Miss Maid above. Miss Maid was the kind of person who could only bully her people. Alan may have disguised as the original identity of the deceased. Otherwise, there's no need to cut off this person's head. Madanzo muttered, and Xiaonan also thought of this. She frowned and said, How to disguise? Don't be fooled by the size of the capital. The relationship between the people here is very good. As long as a stranger comes, the news will spread quickly. For example, their group of outlanders had already traveled several streets the next day. It can only be said that he has the means to not be discovered immediately. Madanzo muttered, the ability to disguise, transform, something like that. Alan is just an ordinary person. Nan Xiaonan shook her head and said, He's not a vampire. Hasn't been confirmed? What if it's an ability other than that of a vampire? Madanzo said, In the previous world, we started as ordinary people. Coming here, our abilities have basically recovered, right? You mean? Nan Xiaonan suddenly thought of a possibility. Sacred ability user? You know about sacred ability users? Madanzo asked curiously. Nan Xiaonan nodded and said, Before entering the Book of Gaia, I was investigating the case of the holy maiden candidate who lost her footing. I found an underground casino and found Norsta there. There, I met a sacred ability user. She said that the place she was born in was a sinful place where she was exiled and that the blood of sinners flowed in her body. However, I still don't know how sacred ability users were born. Madanzo said slowly, The original residents of the Kingdom of Holy Light are actually believers who ascended from the subworlds to the Kingdom of Heaven. Only devout believers can stay there. Because they are collected from countless subworlds, it's easy to gather the relationships of these believers in the subworlds in the Kingdom of Holy Light. Therefore, you'll find in the Kingdom of Holy Light, between father and son, mother and daughter, between brothers and sisters, it's easy to find their original form in some subworlds. If these believers are further cultivated in the Kingdom of Holy Light, they will become petitioners, right? Nan Xiaonan said indifferently, further purifying the faith of believers, and thus cultivating true petitioners. The Kingdom of Heaven is really good at cultivating parasites. It's just SOSO. It's mainly to deal with a certain sickle used to cut leaks. Lady Nin rolled her eyes. So, what does this have to do with sacred ability users? Madanzo said, Let's not talk about the operation of the outer gods for now. Let's talk about the growth path of ordinary believers. I've been in the interlayer of the destiny system for so long and actually discovered something. That is, the destiny system actually has a bug. Destiny system? Nan Xiaonan was shocked. I remember that the destiny system seems to be misty. She used to be the master designer. Madanzo was obviously someone who knew the inside story. But the development of a system and the creation of a system's ecological environment require the accumulation of time. In the later stages, it needs to be crazily patched to better adapt to the mutant data that constantly appears. So, because you lost Miss Yi, the Destiny system can't be updated and patched. Madanzo shook her head and said, "She's not the only one who can do this job. Don't think of the Seraphs as so useless. Their EQ is not high, but their intelligence is at least normal. Of course, because they took over the job, their understanding of the Destiny system is not as thorough as the master designer. Moreover, when Joan of Arc drew the unlucky lot and was sold, she was somewhat dissatisfied. Therefore, before she left, a part of the core data of the system was not made public." "What kind of data is it?" Nan Xiaonan asked curiously. Madanzo smiled bitterly. "It's the final authority to directly shut down the entire system. Don't think that your lady servant girl is no longer a member of the Kingdom of Heaven. In fact, the finances of the Kingdom of Heaven are still in her hands." "That's right. This is indeed something that Lady Servant Girl can do." "Why are you all so miserable?" Lady Nan complained. "If I didn't take the blame for this, wouldn't I have died long ago?" Madanzo sighed. "Besides, although the Seraphs have low EQ, they are not useless. All these years, in order to break the technical blockade and take back the initiative, they have been resisting this final authority. They kept blocking and splitting, and even carried out multiple divisions and updates of the Destiny system. After several such operations, the problem came. Bug. Madanzo nodded. To put it bluntly, it's the incompatibility between the original system and the pirated system. The current version of the Destiny system is called Rain, Wood, Forest, Wind, and it can no longer obtain support from the core. The continuous appearance of loopholes has led to a situation where some believers of the Kingdom of Holy Light are unable to obtain wish power after praying. Then the so-called sinful bloodline, could it be? Madanzo shrugged and said mockingly, "Except for those outer gods who were cast in, there is no such thing as the sinful bloodline. If they were sinners, how could they ascend to heaven?" That's really, Madanzo sighed. The Destiny system can resonate with faith. But after the version of Rain, Wood, Forest, Wind, there was a certain degree of mutation. It can not only resonate with faith, but also with negative emotions. After positive faith resonance is pure wish power. The resonance of negative emotions has mutated into various special abilities. In other words, the so-called sacred ability users. But under normal circumstances, the Palace of Blazing Heaven calls the mutated abilities evil. The Saint powers were nothing more than the last shred of fantasy that the unfortunate exiled sinners had for themselves. They fantasize that they are not sinners, but a new evolution that is not recognized. Nothing. Don't you want to eliminate these sacred ability users? Nan Xiaonan frowned. It should be possible to distinguish these sinners. As long as the current version of the system is inconvenient, the mutation will continue to exist. Even if the existing sacred ability users are cleaned up, there will still be new sacred ability users appearing. How can we get rid of them? Madanzo smiled bitterly. Besides, those bastards in the Palace of Blazing Heaven are real angels, not murderous demons. They're the ones who caused the trouble, so how can they blame it on the innocent believers? They are also unwilling to give up on these sacred ability users, but they're trying their best to repair them. That's why they set up the sinful land and temporarily placed these sacred ability users there. It's similar to isolating them for treatment. It's just that after so many years, there hasn't been any effect. But the sacred ability users in the sinful land don't know about this. They only know one thing, and that is that the stronger the hatred, the stronger the ability. Nan Xiaonan frowned. If Alan is a sacred ability user, I'm afraid he can't get away from the whole thing. It's even possible that he can make Morgana and Lily side with them. No, I need to tell Lady Servant Girl about this immediately. Be quick. Madanzo nodded. Alan? In the courtyard of Dawn Winery, Lady Servant Girl, who was trimming the flowers, put down the scissors in her hand and frowned slightly. Nan Xiaonan nodded with a serious expression. I'm sorry, Lady Yu Yi. I was too careless. I thought Alan was just an ordinary person. So, Lady Nan, I know about this. Lady Servant Girl replied indifferently. But you can't use your sacred ability here. Nan Xiaonan was stunned. Lady Servant Girl suddenly looked at Madanzo. Whether it's the power of will or the ability to mutate, they all need the destiny system to radiate to manifest. In the Book of Gaia, the destiny system can't radiate anything. Am I right, Metatron, the author of the first edition of Rain with Forest Wind? Today's weather is so good. These flowers are so beautiful. Today's clouds are also very white. What am I doing? I'm going to work. I don't know how to pay for today's meal. Goodbye. Seeing Madanzo fly out of the courtyard of the winery, Nan Xiaonan probably knew how Madanzo and Lady Servant Girl developed such a close friendship. If it were me, I would also beat her to death. Pirate dog. Hashtag, 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 hashtag PS1. I wish every third-year high school student who is reading this to win the college entrance examination. PS2. I heard that if you check in here, there's a 50% chance that your wish will come true. Chapter 23-21. Madanzo had escaped, but Lady Nan could not. She was still waiting for further instructions. She was now in a situation where Miss Maid was as steady as an old dog when she did not speak, but once Miss Maid gave a hint, she would act swiftly. Lady Nan, is there anything else? She had spoken, but what about the hint? Lady Nan, aren't you supposed to help decorate the fountain today? Miss Maid began to trim the flowers again. Yes, I'm on my way. Nan Xiaonan nodded. Miss Maid probably meant that she did not have to worry about this matter. But she did not leave immediately. Instead, she hesitated for a moment and said seriously, Miss Maid, I have something to ask you. Is that okay? It's about Metatron, right? Miss Maid did not look up and said directly, It told you that it's the Black Soul Envoy, right? Nan Xiaonan nodded, so it can be, or it can be. It can be, or it can be. Miss Maid just left Dawn Manor with such an ambiguous answer. This directly made Lady Nan's attitude towards Madanzo even more subtle. But Miss Maid was obviously a perfectionist. Why did she give such an uncertain answer? Could it be that even she has not fully confirmed Madanzo's identity? Lady Nan could not help but have an inconceivable thought. This is impossible? Regardless of whether it was possible or not, she finally returned to the fountain in the square, intending to finish decorating the fountain. But Lady Nan, who had just returned, was dumbfounded at once. Asakes was still lying in the shade of the tree, while Isabel was eating snacks at an outdoor tea house nearby, looking at the scenery. Madanzo should have come back earlier, and it was indeed here, but it was just feeding the hooligan cats and dogs. Only Kay or Lily was working seriously. Nan Xiaonan suddenly felt that this group of teammates was difficult to manage, so she simply sat beside Isabel and ordered a drink. If it were you now, I might vote for you. Isabel put down the drink and looked at her with a faint smile. Nan Xiaonan said calmly, Teacher Isabel, what are you talking about? This child, Yulia, has always been perfect. I can't find any major flaws in her. Isabel said softly, She's the best in every aspect. She's never made me worry. It's as if excellence is her attribute. But I don't know when it started, but Yulia is no longer a name, but a standard. Lady Nan muttered, Is this a compliment? Isabel shook her head. Yulia was taught by me, and I put a lot of effort into her lessons. So who are you? I'm Yulia. Nan Xiaonan smiled bitterly. Teacher Isabel, what's wrong with you? Isabel looked at her deeply. Then, can you continue to look like this until you become the real Yulia? This woman who likes both men and women. Nan Xiaonan couldn't help but feel a chill in her heart, but she didn't say anything. When did she realize? At first? Or was it because of the increased contact? They sat there in silence, until Isabel took the initiative again. Is she okay? I'm fine. Lady Nan smiled slightly. At this time, a burst of noise broke the small atmosphere of the small conversation, only to see that there were people all around, and it seemed that the residents of the royal city were all heading in the same direction, to the main street of the royal city. What happened? Don't you know? It's the diplomatic mission of the early spring country. The diplomatic mission of the early spring country? But isn't the prince of the country of early spring already here? This time, the diplomatic mission is to attend the wedding of the prince and the princess. Those who came are all the important people of the early spring country. The queen of the chilly winter country agreed to the prince's marriage proposal, but the condition was that the wedding must be held in the chilly winter royal city. This condition was sent to the early spring country as quickly as possible. Now, the arrival of the diplomatic mission of the early spring country obviously meant that they had agreed to this condition. The foreign affairs minister, who was in charge of receiving foreign guests, had already dressed up and waited. Soon, he welcomed the diplomatic mission of the early spring country to the guest house where the prince was staying. The standard was naturally the highest. Compared to this diplomatic mission, in addition to the dignitaries of the early spring country, there were also two very important people. They came as witnesses to the wedding, directly representing the king of the early spring country. His Royal Highness of the early spring country had been living in seclusion since he entered the chilly winter royal city. Even the foreign affairs minister of chilly winter could only see him once or twice in several visits. It was said that the prince's health was not good since he was a child, and he needed to rest for no reason. This is a sick person. After the little princess marries him, will her married life be happy? The foreign affairs minister thought worriedly at this time. The little princess was not only the child of the queen, but she was also the child of the entire chilly winter country. She came to this world with the blessing of the whole country, and everyone loved her from the bottom of their hearts. As the foreign affairs minister, if it weren't for the tense relationship between the two countries, if it weren't for the gap between the natural barrier and the ice storm once in 100 years, he wouldn't even be willing to take charge of this diplomatic work. No one wanted to give away their own daughter, right? This is Sir Gamma, the chief magician of the early spring country, and also the teacher of His Royal Highness. The envoy of the diplomatic mission introduced the background of the two important people at this time. The other is Legion Commander Renina. These two here will represent His Majesty, the King of our country. The people who were introduced were all in their early 20s. They were quite young beauties, but their achievements were unusually astonishing. The foreign affairs minister was startled. He could clearly sense the terrifying magic fluctuations in the body of the chief magician of the early spring country. The ice magic of the chilly winter country and the spring magic of the early spring country were two completely opposite forces, and the reaction between them was unusually sensitive. The magic of the Chief Gamma was so powerful that even compared to the chief of the chilly winter country, it was not to be outdone. No wonder he was able to ascend the throne of the chief magician of the early spring country at such a young age. As for the other young beauty, her expression was slightly gloomy and naturally emitted a feeling that made people feel a chill down their backs, as if they were being stared at by a poisonous snake. Although Renina did not have as powerful magic as Gamma, her magic capacity could not be underestimated. In addition, her whole body was filled with murderous intent. The early spring was different from the chilly winter. Because of the existence of the ice storm, there had never been any war in the chilly winter country. But the early spring was a country that was at war everywhere. Although the name of the early spring was gentle, the people of this country were not gentle at all. In comparison, the chilly winter was more like a younger brother. These two probably represented not only the king of the early spring, but also the military force of the early spring. Lady Gamma, Lady Renina, it is nice to meet you both. Where's the prince? The foreign affairs minister who had planned to make friends with them was instantly interrupted, and he was stunned with an awkward expression. And the person who planned to talk to him at this time was the cold and gloomy General Renina. His Royal Highness seems to be not feeling well, so he is still recuperating in the guest house. The foreign affairs minister of the chilly winter country smiled and said, "You two will see when you go in. Also, I have arranged for tonight. Go in." The one who spoke was the other representative, the chief magician of the early spring country, Lady Gamma. She directly walked past the foreign affairs minister at this time, not giving face at all. The foreign affairs minister of the chilly winter country opened his mouth and looked at the two young women who were already standing at the top of the early spring country. He could not help but feel angry. "Lady, please don't blame us." The emissary of the diplomatic group hurried forward at this time and said with a wry smile, "These two are more direct masters, and they have never liked complicated things. Moreover, the positions of these two are somewhat different." The Foreign Affairs Minister could not help but feel moved at this time. Could it be that they are actually the emissary of the diplomatic group? Shook his head at this time. He walked closer and whispered to the Foreign Affairs Minister, "There are different voices about this wedding. However, I will try to make this wedding go smoothly." The Foreign Affairs Minister nodded knowingly. The attitude of the early spring towards the chilly winter country was quite contradictory. One side was in favor of war, and the other side was anti-war. This emissary of the diplomatic group was probably arranged by the anti-war faction. However, looking at the attitude of the chief magician and the general, I am afraid that the military force of the early spring country is in favor of war. Hopefully, the weak prince will be able to withstand the pressure from the two of them. The Foreign Affairs Minister could not help but look at the guest house with worry. The ice and snow spirits were flying in the courtyard, but what they released was not coldness, but a burst of coolness. In this city of ice and snow, the courtyard exuded the breath of spring. It was the beginning of spring, and the prince was leaning against the door frame. He was only wearing a thin robe, and the butterfly had stopped at his fingertips. It had been a long time. At the entrance of the courtyard, the guard Kaz, who was wearing heavy armor, stood still like a mountain. In the room, the magician Gamma and the general of the army, Reina, were sitting on the ground at this time. They had been sitting for a long time. His Highness suddenly coughed twice. Gamma frowned directly. "Your Highness, the environment of chilly winter is still too difficult for you. You better go back with me." His Highness smiled and said, "In fact, I am used to it. When I first came, I had to wear 2 more clothes." "Your Highness." The chief magician's voice sank. "Please don't make trouble." His Highness said softly, "Gamma, you have lost some weight. Are you okay?" The chief magician's chest heaved up and down a few times, and he muttered, "Not good." The general of the army, Reina, who was sitting on the side, suddenly said with a blank expression, "These days when His Highness left, Gamma's people often got angry, and they often went to the barracks to find people to learn from. Recently, it has become worse, and they have dismissed 3 cooks in succession. In addition, they also beat the noble young masters of King's City from top to bottom." "Rainina." The chief magician's face was pale, and his voice was colder than the ice and snow in winter. "Do you want to die?" The general of the army said indifferently, "I don't want to die. Similarly, I don't want my soldiers to come to me every day and cry. So the best solution is, Your Highness, when will you return home? You haven't accompanied me to fish for a long time." "I will go back." His Highness thought for a while and said, "With my wife." The chief magician and the general of the army looked at each other. Reina said calmly, "Your Highness, the first legion under my command has been assembled. I am confident that I can behead the Queen of Cold Winter within a day." Gamma also said expressionlessly, "The magician brigade of the palace can blow up the capital in half a day. Without the ice and snowstorm barrier, Cold Winter is just a little brother." His Highness smiled bitterly and said helplessly, "I am here to marry." The chief magician said righteously, "The shame of the early spring can only be repaid with the blood of Cold Winter. As the crown prince of the early spring, you can't forget this blood feud." The general of the army also nodded at the moment. "Give me a day. After flattening Cold Winter, you go back and accompany me to fish." "Can you always think about fishing?" The chief magician slapped the back of Reina's head directly. The general of the army said indifferently, "Because fishing can sit in the arms of His Highness the Prince." "What?" The chief magician of the early spring suddenly stood up and said in disbelief and inexplicable annoyance, "How come I didn't know there was such a thing?" "That's because this big-breasted but brainless girl only wears low-cut clothes at night to urge His Highness to study." Reina sneered. "These two will probably last for a long time." His Highness the Prince of the early spring couldn't help but smile. In fact, their relationship was very good. After all, they grew up together. This was the person who was arranged to guard his road from the crown prince to the king. His Highness the Prince quietly walked into the courtyard. The ice and snow spirits were still flying around him. At the entrance of the courtyard, Kaz's imposing figure was still motionless. He didn't find it strange and even didn't bother to pay attention to it. His Highness the Prince suddenly wrapped his clothes around his body and muttered to himself, "I still feel a little cold. Will I see her again?" That happened on the night when he first came to the Cold Winter Kingdom. Here, there came an assassin. Even Kaz, one of the strongest warriors in the kingdom, couldn't deal with the terrible assassin. She was dressed in black, but shone like the bright moon. From that moment on, His Highness the Prince couldn't forget that figure. The leaves fell, and His Highness the Prince couldn't help but cough a few times. The ice and snow spirits seemed to be frightened and directly scattered in the air in an instant. His Highness the Prince was slightly absent-minded, but he saw a reflection of a figure in the fish pond in the courtyard. He subconsciously looked over. On the other side of the fish pond, there was a man wearing a fox mask, looking at him at this moment. Into this chapter. Chapter 23-22. The pond rippled because of the fallen leaves. Looking at the other side of the pond, His Royal Highness had a strange feeling. Although there was a fox mask, the other person's eyes seemed to be the same as his. His Royal Highness smiled and whispered, "Did you come here to see me?" There was no answer, only a stare. His Royal Highness did not seem to be reserved under this stare. He just pondered for a moment and then showed a look of realization. "That young lady said that I missed someone. I think it's you. She came here before?" His Royal Highness did not sound surprised. Hearing this, His Royal Highness simply nodded and looked very relaxed. "Not only did she come, but she also almost killed me. Did she cause you any trouble?" His Royal Highness shook his head. "She is the Witch of Cold Winter, right? After all, I've already killed a prince in the early spring before me. You want to see her again, right?" It was as if the words could directly hit his heart. Accurate and accurate. He wanted to hear an answer from his own mouth. His Royal Highness of early spring could not help but ask curiously, "You seem to be a little unconfident." Wearing the fox mask, he just shook his head gently. "That's good." His Royal Highness could not help but show a look of doubt. He seemed to have met a kindred spirit, as if he was looking into a mirror. The man wearing the fox mask in front of him, did he really look like himself? Was it the appearance, the character, or something else? His Royal Highness smiled calmly, but his face was a little pale. He coughed softly and then slowly said, "It seems that you have found the answer. As long as you can care about her, watch her, even if there is a blood feud between the two countries, you can still have this strange feeling." The man wearing the fox mask slowly walked over. He crossed the water as if he was walking on flat ground. He came in front of the prince, and the atmosphere began to quiet down. Then he seemed to be smiling, and that was a kind of relieved tone. "Then, I think this should be my own intention." His Royal Highness's eyes were slightly startled. He seemed to be able to completely understand part of this mysterious man's thoughts in an instant, as if they were connected. "Are you not sure about this feeling?" "No, I've always been very sure and very clear," the fox mask figure said indifferently. "But I'm rather special, so special that I have no choice but to start verifying some things." His Royal Highness slightly frowned, as if he was deep in thought. "Feelings for people? You could say that's part of it." The fox-masked man nodded. "Nice to meet you, Prince of Early Spring." His Royal Highness also smiled and said, "Nice to meet you too, Mr. Mysterious Man. I'm not mysterious." The fox-masked Seiji shook his head. "It's just that no matter what, you're unable to see who I am, but I can. This isn't fair to you. Maybe it's because I've already obtained too many things." The prince smiled casually and said, "What I have is already very unfair to most people. Therefore, on this basis, I won't have any complaints. Can I be your best man at your wedding?" he asked softly under the fox mask. His Royal Highness said thoughtfully, "So, will the bridesmaid be that young lady?" "Why do you think so?" he asked curiously. His Royal Highness smiled casually and said, "Because you're all the kind of people who will only be allowed to stand beside each other." He was silent for a while. His Royal Highness suddenly said, "Yes, although what I see may only be the bridesmaid's new clothes, it must be very beautiful. I also want to see it." "Thank you," he said in a low voice. At this time, he suddenly had an impulse to return to the manor to see her. He rarely had this impulse. What he wanted to tell her was, his love for her, even in the past, was also like this. It had nothing to do with the source. "Has anyone been here?" The voice of the chief magician suddenly woke up the prince, who was standing by the pool and fiddling with the fish in the pool. Gamma and Renina slowly walked out at this time. It seemed that they had stopped the endless mutual attacks. "It's a new friend." His Royal Highness raised his head and smiled slightly. "But I feel that it's someone I've known for a long time." That's the smile. The chief magician and legion commanders in early spring almost fell for this smile that could heal people's hearts. Just like the little princess of chilly winter in the rumors. People all over the country liked this princess. In early spring, most girls couldn't resist such a sincere smile from His Royal Highness. Sure enough, no matter whether they could get this smile in the end, they didn't want to see it taken away from them from the bottom of their hearts. "Renina, let's destroy chilly winter." "Yes." Hey, you guys. That's it." The Queen of Chilly Winter was receiving the Foreign Affairs Minister, who had just returned in the study, listening to the other party's report on the reception of the diplomatic group of the Kingdom of Early Spring. The Foreign Affairs Minister glanced at the absent-minded Queen and then said, "Your Majesty, according to my speculation, the two main representatives of the diplomatic group are very likely to be the representatives of the opposition in early spring. Perhaps the two lords may secretly destroy this wedding. Should we make some preparations early?" "Your Majesty?" "Oh, then make some preparations." The Queen seemed to have just reacted and responded quite casually. The Foreign Affairs Minister said, "I'll send someone to closely monitor the movements of the hotel. In addition, I suggest that Her Royal Highness stay in the palace for these 2 days." "We'll do as you say." Her Majesty nodded. The Foreign Affairs Minister couldn't help but have a strange expression. Even if the little princess was to be grounded, shouldn't the Queen do it herself? As a minister, what right did he have to do it? "Is there anything else?" the Queen of Chilly Winter suddenly asked. Not yet." The Foreign Affairs Minister immediately wiped the sweat on his forehead. "I'll leave first, Your Majesty." The Queen didn't ask him to stay. After the Foreign Affairs Minister left, she didn't even stay in the study. This study was used by that woman. As long as she stayed in the study, she would feel that she was being watched by that woman. The entire ice and snow palace made the Queen of Winter feel uneasy. It was as if she was the one who was imprisoned here. Damn it. Damn Lily. Damn Joan of Arc. The Book of Gaia was still in her hand, but at this time, it didn't listen to her. It was as if it was completely broken. Everything couldn't develop as she expected. This feeling of being a marionette made the Queen of Chilly Winter extremely irritable. In that case, why did she wake up in the Holy Light Kingdom? I must think of a way. She subconsciously came to the dungeon of the Snow Palace. The guards of the dungeon knelt down one after another. The Queen ignored the crowd and walked straight past, but she suddenly stopped. "Who are you?" Her Majesty the Queen suddenly turned around and looked at one of the soldiers. "Your Majesty, my name is Stanley." The soldier lowered his head with awe in his voice. "Why are you here?" the Queen asked coldly. The soldier quickly replied, "The person on duty is sick, so I'm here to replace." "Your Majesty." The Queen of Chilly Winter looked at him suspiciously and didn't see anything. She said indifferently, "Do your job well. There's no need to replace the guards." "Understood." The Queen of Chilly Winter turned around and walked into the dungeon. The moment she turned around, the Queen's expression became gloomier. Damn Balaam. Arranging the guards to guard the dungeon should be Balaam's full-time job. However, Balaam had disappeared long ago. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't find him. Since that woman appeared, everything was out of her control. Balaam's disappearance even made her suspect that it was that woman's doing. The Queen of Chilly Winter quickly walked into the depths of the dungeon. Most of the people in prison here were ice sculptures. These ice sculptures were basically the leaders of the 7 capitals of the Holy Light Kingdom. Basically, except for Balaam, the president of the city of Dawn, the mayor of the Free Cities were all here. However, the queen's footsteps didn't stop. She walked to the deepest part of the dungeon. This was the place where the archangel was placed. The archangel, St. John, was now an ice sculpture with a trace of anger. Looking at this ice sculpture, the anger and dissatisfaction in the Queen of Chilly Winter's heart almost dissipated by half. Suddenly, the queen took out a short sword and madly stabbed the archangel who had turned into an ice sculpture. Her mouth kept releasing the hideous laughter of a torturer. St. John's ice sculpture was caused by the power of the Book of Gaia. Now that the Queen of Chilly Winter had temporarily lost control of the Book of Gaia, the ice sculpture couldn't be removed. Not only could it not be removed, but it also couldn't be destroyed. Therefore, there was only one purpose for this ice sculpture of the archangel, to be the Queen of Chilly Winter's punching bag. She felt that only by coming here and torturing the ice sculpture could she release her dissatisfaction. Without this method to release her pressure, the Queen of Chilly Winter would have broken down long ago. Joan of Arc. Damn it. Joan of Arc. I won't let you go. The Queen of Chilly Winter slowly breathed a sigh of relief until the refined short sword was no longer in shape. She threw the short sword aside. There was a small pile of similar things next to it. Her Majesty the Queen smiled and felt more refreshed. However, when she saw the unscathed ice sculpture, she snorted coldly. She had to leave this place before this feeling of frustration grew. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. The queen's eyes became more and more gloomy, until she saw a pair of eyes that had completely lost their spirit. The queen stopped in one of the cells. Inside, there was a figure of a young girl curled up in the corner. The Queen of Chilly Winter couldn't help but frown. This young girl was captured by Lily. The Queen of Chilly Winter didn't know the intention of Lily to capture this girl who looked like a broken doll. After the last time they met, she had completely lost contact with her family. She should be in the last page of the book. Did something happen? Remia, the Queen of Chilly Winter frowned. She felt that she needed to know this girl carefully. So, the door of the cell was open for the first time. The queen slowly walked to the front of the girl. The girl didn't move like an empty shell, but gradually, the Queen of Chilly Winter narrowed her eyes. She thought a good idea. Where's Mother? When the little princess walked in the ice and snow palace, the cold palace seemed to come alive in an instant. The cold air seemed to become cold, and people unknowingly became more energetic. This was different from the queen, who made people feel cold. The queen is dealing with official business, princess. Oh, the little princess was a little disappointed. Then she thought for a while and said, I have something to discuss with my mother. Can I go to her room and wait for her? I'm afraid that's not possible. The maid smiled bitterly and said, Princess, the queen ordered that no one is allowed to enter her room. I see. The little princess nodded and showed a sad but sensible smile. Then I'll come back later. Wait, Your Highness. The maid's heart was broken. How could there be such a strict and cruel mother? How long has it been since the queen met the princess? How long has it been since the queen had dinner with the princess? What's wrong? Princess, why don't you go in and wait? The maid seemed to have made some decisions, even if the queen would blame her later. But others can't, but you're the princess, the daughter of the queen. The maid pushed the little princess into the room. It's okay. Who knows? I might be able to give Her Majesty a surprise. That's true. The little princess giggled. She hadn't been to her mother's room for a long time. The little princess looked at everything in the room with curiosity. Since she was sensible, she had her own room. She heard that she was born in this room, but she didn't have any impression of this room. The little princess sat on the bed and swung her legs, waiting expectantly. She wanted to discuss with her mother about the bridesmaid at the wedding. She could only discuss with her mother about this kind of thing. What's that? Placed in the corner was a large object covered with a black cloth. Looking at the shape, it seemed to be a mirror. The little princess couldn't help but be curious about why a mirror was covered with a cloth. Subconsciously, she walked towards the mirror that was covered. But at this time, something alarmed her. She subconsciously turned around and saw that in the fireplace on the other side of the wall, something suddenly fell down. It was a white-bearded old man wearing red clothes and carrying a big bag. Chapter 23:23. Someone actually crawled out of the fireplace in Her Majesty's room. If it were someone else, they would definitely scream, but there was only the little princess here. She only felt curious. "Grandpa Nicholas, why are you here? It's not New Year yet." "I found you, little princess." The white-bearded old man who just got up calmed down and immediately said with surprise, "I really didn't go the wrong way. This is Mother's room." The little princess shook her head. "Her Majesty's?" Nicholas's expression suddenly changed slightly, and then he laughed bitterly. "I'm old and useless. I probably remembered the wrong way." With that, the white-bearded old man began to pat the dust on his body, and then opened the big bag behind him, looking for something. The little princess approached with curiosity. "Grandpa Nicholas, you're looking for me?" "Yes." The white-bearded old man nodded and said casually, "Isn't it your wedding day soon? So I plan to bring you this year's New Year's gift first." "Really?" The little princess grabbed Nicholas's arm in surprise and joy. "Grandpa is the best. I should be the one who should be grateful." Nicholas smiled faintly and said, "As long as you believe in my existence when you grow up, I'll become more meaningful." The little princess giggled and said, "Only then, Grandpa, you come to see me every New Year's. You're the treasure of chilly winter." Nicholas said softly, "It's a pity that you're going to marry into the kingdom of early spring. I'm afraid I won't be able to give you a New Year's gift." "Why?" "The similarity between the two countries is different." Nicholas sighed and said, "I'm just a New Year's old man in chilly winter. I can't step into the kingdom of early spring." "I see, but it doesn't matter." Nicholas smiled again and said, "I've prepared the gifts for the future. There are 100 gifts here." The white-bearded old man stuffed the whole bag into the little princess's hands and told her that this was equivalent to them meeting for 100 New Years. "Oh, my little princess, don't cry. If you cry, the whole chilly winter will have an avalanche." The little princess nodded silently. She even smiled through her tears. "Grandpa, I will open a gift every New Year. Every New Year's Eve, I will stand where I can see the snow-capped peak and give you New Year's blessings." The elves on the road are all very cheerful. Nicholas smiled and said, "It's not just about you. It seems to have something to do with the prince in early spring as well. He is the same as you, a child blessed by the spirit of the atmosphere. Believe me, the whole world will bless you." I haven't seen your highness yet." The little princess lowered her head with a slightly red face. "Never seen it before?" Nicholas was a little stunned. He scratched his messy hair, and his eyes suddenly swept across the room. Got it. There's a way for you to see it." With that, the red-clothed, white-bearded old man quickly walked to the mirror covered by a black cloth. "With this, you can see whoever you want." He lifted the black cloth, and a vertical oval mirror appeared in front of the little princess in an instant. "Grandpa Nicholas, mirror? This is not an ordinary mirror." Nicholas smiled and said, "This is the Mirror of Ladies, the legendary magic mirror." "Magic mirror?" The little princess was slightly absent-minded. She subconsciously said, "Why is there in Mother's room? This was originally the first princess." Nicholas opened his mouth and muttered, "This is actually your sister's." After she left the palace, this mirror fell into the hands of Her Majesty the Queen. "Sisters?" Nicholas seemed unwilling to mention the dark history of the chilly winter kingdom. He changed the topic and said, "The Mirror of Ladies is a magic mirror that can answer any question. As long as you walk in front of it and tell your question, you will know the answer. Don't you want to know what kind of person the prince in early spring is? Just use this magic mirror." The little princess hesitated. But since Mother put it here and covered it with a cloth, that may be because she is afraid that others will abuse the power of the magic mirror. Nicholas thought for a while and said, "But you are different. You came to this world with the blessing of the elves. In this world, there is no power that can affect you." The little princess walked in front of the magic mirror doubtfully. This mirror was dark and could not even reflect anything. The little princess stood there, but she could not see anything. At this moment, the pitch-black surface of the mirror rippled like the surface of water, and an incomparably small blue bird slowly appeared. Please tell me your question. I want to know what kind of person the prince of the kingdom of early spring is. Can I? The little princess summoned her courage and asked under Nicholas' encouraging gaze. The blue bird did not respond, but the dark mirror moved. Its darkness seemed to be dispelled all of a sudden, revealing the blue sky and white clouds, and a young man with black hair and black eyes. This is the prince of the kingdom of early spring. The little princess muttered to herself. She suddenly had a feeling that this prince was like someone she had seen before, a gentleman who appeared in her sister's manner. He even covered his eyes with his hand. She even touched his face. The little princess's face suddenly heated up, and her white neck flushed red. She subconsciously asked again, "Magic mirror, will the prince like me?" "The prince of early spring will like you." The magic mirror's voice slowly sounded. "He will like anyone who is pure, just like you, your highness. You also like everyone." "Really?" The little princess could not help but show a look of yearning. But Nicholas could not help but frown. The magic mirror's answer required a lot of consideration. But basically, the answer given by the magic mirror would not be wrong. Then will we live happily together in the future? The little princess asked another question. This was probably a question that a girl of her age would want to ask. "You will be like the prince and princess in the fairy tale, and live happily together in the end." The magic mirror answered again. The little princess could not help but cover her face with both hands, appearing to be in a daze. She was loved by the people and was as pure as a piece of white paper. Living happily together seemed to be the limit of her imagination and endurance. The little princess's heart was beating fast. Then I still want to ask, "Princess, it's about time." Nicholas suddenly interrupted. He picked up the black cloth on the ground and covered the magic mirror directly. "Knowing this is enough. Please keep an unexpected surprise for your future." I couldn't hold it in. The little princess knocked on her head and stuck out her tongue. "Grandpa, you were right. This is really a magic mirror. Standing here, I feel like I have countless things to ask, and unknowingly. It's good that you know." Nicholas nodded. A person's desire for knowledge is unlimited, and this pair of sunglasses can satisfy this desire without limit. But while it satisfies this desire, it also stimulates this desire to expand infinitely. If you can't hold it in, you will easily lose yourself. The little princess nodded fearfully. Nicholas said, "Well, it's getting late. I have to leave here as soon as possible. This is the queen's room." With that, the white-bearded old man quickly climbed into the fireplace and climbed up. The little princess had just taken 2 steps forward when Nicholas suddenly poked his head down. "Remember, don't use the magic mirror again. Also, don't tell anyone that I was here." "I know." Only then did Nicholas disappear into the fireplace. This time, he really left. The little princess tied up the big bag with 100 gifts and secretly glanced at the mirror of Ladies that was covered with the black cloth again. She actually had a question to ask, a question that she was very concerned about. The little princess was pure, but this did not mean that she was not naughty, like now. "Ask me one more question, and I will go back." She lifted the black cloth again. "Please tell me your question." "Magic mirror, can you tell me?" The little princess took a deep breath. "My sister Huang really betrayed Lin Dong, killed her fiancé, and caused the death of my father?" The magic mirror's voice was emotionless. Her highness did kill her fiancé, and this incident caused your father's condition to worsen, and he finally passed away." "Liar! How come my sister?" The little princess shook her head fiercely. "Sister is such a gentle person. I don't believe that she would do so many cruel things. I am the mirror of Ladies, the magic mirror that gives the correct answer. I'm not lying to you. If you think that I am lying to you, it is because the question you asked may have already lied to you." "What does this mean?" The little princess was startled and was about to finish speaking. "It means that your question itself may be wrong." The answer was not the magic mirror's voice. It was a voice that the little princess had never heard before. It came from behind her. The little princess turned around subconsciously. She saw 2 figures in black robes silently appear behind her. The little princess could not help but jump in fright. She felt very strong magic power from these two people, especially one of them. The strength of his magic power was something she had never seen before in her life. Before the little princess could say anything, the one with the weaker magic power suddenly appeared behind her. The little princess only felt a wave of dizziness, and her vision turned black. Seeing that the little princess was about to fall to the ground, the one with the weaker magic power suddenly reached out and supported the little princess. "Are you that kind?" The guy with the stronger magic power suddenly said. Unknowingly, the guy with the weaker magic power shook his head. "This princess has a special power." "Umph. At such a young age," the guy with the stronger magic power said indifferently. "This way, we can't let her marry His Highness." "Now," the guy with the weaker magic power asked indifferently. The guy with the stronger magic power said, "Of course we should go back. As long as the princess of chilly winter disappears, the marriage will naturally be canceled. It's best if we can find a reason to start a war." The guy with the weaker magic power suddenly said, "We can't let Her Highness know. Let's go." The guy with the stronger magic power nodded. Before leaving, he suddenly looked at the black mirror. "This seems to be the legendary Mirror of Ladies. Pack it up too." The guy with the weaker magic power was silent for a moment and finally agreed. He said directly, "I'll use it first. The princess is in my room?" In front of the door, the Queen of Chilly Winter's expression changed slightly. A chill began to spread in the corridor. The maid guarding the door didn't notice the sudden chill and just shivered. "Her Highness said that she has something to discuss with you." "Your Majesty, You forgot what I said." The Queen of Chilly Winter took a deep breath. She pushed open the door of the room and walked straight in. Behind her, the maid guarding the door had turned into a crystal statue. However, the Queen of Chilly Winter did not see the little princess in the room. Not only did the little princess disappear, but even the magic mirror she put in the room disappeared at this time. On the ground, there was only a big bag full of stuff. The Queen of Chilly Winter frowned instantly and walked to the big bag. She saw a note under the bag at this time. "If you want Snow White back, come alone at midnight tonight. Remember, you can only come alone." On the back of the note, there was an address. Snow White was kidnapped. The Queen of Chilly Winter's face was livid. She had raised this daughter for more than 10 years, but she had no feelings for her. But Snow White was very important to her. This was the way she could get the pages of the chilly winter world. The queen firmly believed that as long as she could complete the Book of Gaia, then she would be able to activate the power of the Book of Gaia, again, to deal with that hateful woman. "Who is it?" the queen muttered. "This may be an opportunity." Suddenly, a strange smile appeared on the Queen of Chilly Winter's face. She waved her hand directly, and a dove condensed of ice and snow appeared out of thin air and flew out of the window. The direction was Dawn Manor. After releasing the ice and snow dove, the Queen of Chilly Winter paced back and forth in the room. She needed to deal with this matter more carefully. She needed to be as safe as possible. However, before the plan that had suddenly appeared in her mind could be completed, a black-clothed blonde woman had already appeared behind her. She had come. It was faster than he had imagined. She really cares about Snow White's existence. The Queen of Chilly Winter sneered at this time, but she did not show it on her face. She just frowned and said coldly, "Sorry, Snow White was kidnapped. In that case, I have no use for you." The blonde woman in black, Miss Maid said indifferently at this time, "Sure enough, Morgan, a worthless person like you should be directly melted down." The Queen of Chilly Winter couldn't help but shudder. She missed one thing. That was the woman in front of him. It wasn't the first time that he had killed her. End of this chapter. Chapter 23-24. The black butterflies that brought death fluttered in the air, and the snow elves in the atmosphere moved away. The Queen of Winter shuddered. Was she afraid of not dying? As a Celtic god who was in charge of death, she was never afraid of death. Until, as a god, she didn't know when her life and death was controlled by others. Her soul was cast into the kingdom of holy light and was reborn. She loved new life more than ever. She also learned to be afraid of death. Like an ordinary person who encountered death, the Queen of Winter's face was extremely pale at this time. Snow was kidnapped. The other party asked me to go alone. A voice that sounded like a scream rang out. The black butterflies stopped at the tip of her nose and gently trembled their wings. The Queen of Winter didn't dare to breathe. A drop of cold sweat quietly slid down, and the fluttering of the black butterfly's wings seemed to slow down. Whoosh! However, the wings that seemed to be about to stop burned directly at this time. Miss Maid's light voice sounded at the same time. "Morgan, haven't you become smarter?" The Queen of Winter's face changed slightly. "The Book of Gaia. I can tell you how to use it. Although you took it away, you don't know how to use it." The book could not be used as long as it was in the hand. If Lilith did not teach her how to use it, she might not be able to find the corresponding opening method, even if she was given 10 years. With her knowledge as the god of death in the divine system, she still needed at least 10 years. She did not believe that this woman could completely understand the Book of Gaia in just a few days after taking it away. She couldn't defeat Morgan, and the book was taken away. Without the Book of Gaia, she couldn't escape. It was like being maliciously played by fate. "You will know sooner or later," Miss Maid said indifferently. "For me, this is not a very urgent matter." So, more butterflies landed on the Queen of Winter's body. "I can help you deal with Lily," the Queen of Winter said in horror. "I can help you kill her. She doesn't know this yet." Miss Maid said expressionlessly, "These butterflies will become your grave. After all, you used to be a god. I'll let you die with dignity. You have already destroyed the Celtic pantheon." The Queen of Winter seemed to have broken down in an instant. She screamed ferociously, "You still have to kill me again." Miss Maid didn't speak, but more and more butterflies appeared, gradually covering the Queen of Winter. "Let's die together." The Queen of Winter suddenly laughed wildly, and a terrifying ice magic burst out from her body. The black butterflies were all frozen into ice and fell from her body. Miss Maid looked at him expressionlessly. "I am the Queen of Winter, the most powerful man in this country." Her Majesty the Queen shouted, "Snow spirits in the atmosphere, crawl onto my feet. Are you going to recite the spell again?" The servant girl asked suddenly. These words made the Winter Queen, who had been brewing her anger for a long time, pause. The momentum that she had gathered with great difficulty suddenly weakened. "Why do you Celtic people like to recite spells so much?" Miss Maid said slowly, "It seems to be called inherent enchantment." "What do you know?" The Queen of Winter shouted coldly. Miss Maid sighed and shook her head. "Actually, in the time it takes to recite the spell, I can already kill you 100 times. Like this." The frozen butterflies on the ground were instantly revived. The black flame directly vaporized the ice crystals on their bodies and once again stopped on the Queen of Winter. The blazing black flames caused the Winter Queen to let out a mournful shriek. "You can't kill me. I'm Snow White's mother. If I die, her grief will freeze this country. You can't get the pages of this world. You can't." However, the burning black flame burst out in an instant and even poured directly into the Queen of Winter's mouth, directly burning her body. "How should I say?" Miss Maid walked slowly. "Actually, from the moment you chose this identity to enter this world, your fate has already been decided. Morgan, you should be glad that it was me who did it. Do you know what you've done?" The Queen of Winter was only left with a pair of bloodshot eyes, which were filled with endless fear and despair. "This little princess, even I will be a little jealous." Miss Maid smiled slightly. "You know, I've never regretted destroying the Celtic gods. After all, I was indeed the executioner of the kingdom of heaven. As for you, if you didn't appear again, I wouldn't even think of. You're dispensable." The Queen of Winter's bloodshot eyes suddenly widened. She thought she would die with everlasting regret. Finally, the black butterfly completely swallowed her. Butterfly burial. They slowly dispersed and then slowly dissipated in the atmosphere. In the end, the Queen of Winter was only left with a ball of soul. The soul slowly floated to Miss Maid's palm. At this time, a flagpole emerged from the ground, exuding an ominous aura. 10,000. Miss Maid sent the soul in her hand into the flagpole. When it was completely unfolded, the souls of 10,000 gods would roar. The flagpole sank silently. Miss Maid stood still for a moment and then suddenly said, "You can come in, Lady Nan." A gray mist slowly floated into the room at this time and then turned into Lady Nan's body. Lady Nan stood carefully at this time. Damn it! I've seen this servant girl tear people apart last time. This time, it seems to be more terrible. 10,000. 10,000 God's souls? What was he trying to do? Do you have any orders? Sister Nan couldn't help but use honorifics subconsciously. Lady Nan, there's a job that suits you very well. Miss Maid smiled slightly. Are you interested in playing the role of the Queen of Winter? She almost couldn't help but curse out loud. You have to be elegant. In the inn of the Winter Kingdom, in the early spring, the prince was reading a book about the strange objects of the Winter Kingdom. He seemed to be fascinated by it, and unknowingly, the sun had set. Your Highness, it's time to eat. The prince rubbed his eyebrows and put down the book. He looked up and saw a strong man covered in iron armor walking in with a plate of food. Are you the only one, Cats? The prince asked softly. What's the problem? I've always brought you food, haven't I? Cat said with a buzzing voice. Because of the helmet, his expression couldn't be seen. Usually, there's no problem. The prince smiled and said, but since Gamma and Renina are here, then there's a problem. Have they gone out? I don't know. Cat shook his head. His Royal Highness just smiled at the tall and strong man in iron armor. Well, Cat lowered his head and said, they did go out, but I really don't know where they went. How long has it been? The prince thought for a while and said, most of the day. His Highness muttered to himself for a while. He suddenly looked in the direction of the courtyard, only to see a few fist-sized balls of light flickering like fireflies flying out from the flowers, grass, and trees in the courtyard. They slowly floated to his side. Do you know where they went? The prince asked in a low voice. Cats looked at this scene and didn't find it strange. The prince in the early spring was the one who was favored by the elves. He could communicate with all the elves in the atmosphere and then obtain information. As long as it was something the elves in the atmosphere knew, the prince could also know it. At this time, after the prince and the elves talked, he showed a bitter smile. Cats asked directly, Your Highness, is there a problem? The prince looked helpless and said, It should be a big problem. Get ready, I'm going out. The moon was bright and the stars were shining. There was no snowstorm in the winter and the stars were shining. The starlight dotted the surface of the black magic mirror as if it was a mysterious starry sky. In a windmill not far from the king's city, two people in black cloaks were squatting in front of the magic mirror. They were competing to be the first to ask the magic mirror. So, neither of them succeeded in asking the question. The little princess woke up a long time ago. She was tied to a pillar and was curiously looking at the two people in black cloaks. She felt that they were very interesting. She could tell that they were two women. It's very late. Can I go home? The little princess looked up at the sky and said, If I go back too late, Mother will be worried about me. The two people in black cloaks were stunned. They were too serious in fighting for the right to ask the magic mirror. When did the little princess wake up? They didn't even care. Go back. Who said you can go back? The black cloak with strong magic power sneered. When we took you away, we didn't even think about letting you leave. Don't be naive, but I really can't go home too late. The little princess seemed to be anxious. How about this? I'll come here tomorrow to accompany you. The black cloak with strong magic power was speechless. This princess, did she not understand the situation? Then, a scene that shocked her happened. The rope that tied the little princess suddenly loosened. After the little princess was freed, she smiled and said to the air, Thank you. Legend has it that the little princess of winter is also someone who is favored by the spirit of the atmosphere. It seems. The black cloak with weaker magic power said in a low voice, Someone like Her Highness, I really have to go home. The little princess lifted her skirt and bowed slowly. But don't worry, I will come here tomorrow. The two black cloaks looked at each other. The black cloak with stronger magic power shuddered and grabbed the little princess's arm. You can't go yet. Gamma. At this moment, the black cloak with weaker magic power suddenly screamed. At the same time, the door of the windmill exploded. A cold current poured into the windmill and instantly froze the ground. At the same time, an icicle was shot directly towards the black-robed Gamma, who had a strong magic power. Bang! The magic barrier collided with the icicles and exploded into countless ice dust. Gamma took 2 steps back, and her robe and hat were even hit with a large number of holes by the shattered ice. At the entrance of the windmill, 2 figures slowly walked in. Mother! At this time, the little princess cried out in surprise, and then cried out again in surprise, and sister. She hurriedly ran to the door and quickly came to the side of the Queen of Cold Winter. She blinked her eyes and looked at her curiously. Are you okay? The Winter Queen asked with concern. Did these 2 people hurt you? The little princess shook her head and said suspiciously, Mother, you seem to be a little different. I'm too worried about you. The Winter Queen sighed slowly. Let's not talk about this first. After dealing with this matter, we'll talk about it when we go back. You stand behind. The little princess nodded obediently, then quickly walked behind the Winter Queen and looked at her sister curiously. The appearance of Big Sister and Empress Mother together really surprised her. At this moment, as expected of the Winter Queen, at this time, the chief magician simply lifted his black robe and revealed a cold smile. However, I remember that only you were allowed to come here. You are Miss Gamma? The Winter Queen couldn't help but show a look of surprise, but more of a strange expression. Oh, the chief mage of early spring smiled slightly and said, It turns out that even the Winter Queen knows my name. This will be my honor. I don't only know your name, I also know that you are actually F***, what's going on? Queen of Chilly Winter subconsciously glanced at the maid beside her, and she couldn't help but steal a glance at the valiant chief Mage Gamma in early spring. What kind of ill-fated relationship did these 2 ladies have to meet each other in this damn place? The last time these 2 confronted each other, if the boss didn't make a move in time, wouldn't Kelowna of Child World number 3 be blown up in the end? Gamma. So, your name is Gamma. The maid narrowed her eyes at this time. It's really not a good name. The Winter Queen's expression changed instantly. The maid came up with a sharp tongue. How much hatred did she have? Gamma chuckled. I'm sorry. My name is not good and pollutes your ears. However, it's also because you tarnished my sight first. Let's call it a draw. The maid said indifferently. Sure enough, no matter where it is, it makes people forget it. After all, I came here tonight, and I didn't want to be reasonable. Gamma sneered. Tell me your name. I won't bully the nameless people. Please rest assured. The maid chuckled. I'll let you remember me with every inch of your body. Boom! The powerful magic power was released in Gamma's body, forming a bright golden flame. She said directly, Lay Nina, I'll leave the Winter Queen to you. This woman really makes me inexplicably angry. Oh! The maid stretched out her hand, and a flagpole with an ominous aura instantly emerged from the ground. She held it in her hand. The Winter Queen took in a deep breath. F***, isn't this the last resort? How can she use it just like that? I'm afraid it's another life and death friendship. Behind her, the little princess blinked her eyes. Meow, 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 my sister is so cool. Child World number 003, Pet Hospital. Kelowna Shinryu, who was fighting with all her strength in the game, suddenly shivered. The kind that came from the top of her head to the soles of her feet. Kelowna Shinryu shivered subconsciously at this time, opened the curtain, and looked at the burning sun. Strange. It's so hot? Chapter 23-25. The ground suddenly cracked, and the imitation collapsed in an instant. A figure directly crashed into the ground at this time, shoveling out a terrible pit. Gamma spat out a mouthful of blood mixed with some meat dregs and applied to climb up solemnly. She didn't mean to underestimate the enemy, and she didn't even plan to show mercy from the beginning. The eyes of the proud woman made Gamma inexplicably angry. Even so, in the case of going all out, it was just one blow. It's like a different dimension. Gamma's vision was even a little blurry. In the blurry vision, the figure of the proud woman was close, and the flag that had not been unfolded was pointing at herself. Miss Gamma, are you only at this level? What do you mean only at this level? She's already the chief magician in the early spring. Okay? Gamma took a deep breath and spat out another mouthful of blood. He sneered and said, "It seems that you are very keen on taunting me, although I don't know why. I can imagine that there must be something in me that is bothering you." Miss Maid said calmly, "In fact, I don't hate you. You don't hate it. The standard is really high." Gamma stood there with great difficulty. The palm of his hand covered the ribs. At least 3 ribs had been broken. Miss Maid said to herself, "I don't hate you because there will be a little possibility of infinitely close to 0 on you. No matter if it's you or anyone else, as long as it can make my master more sentimental, it's always good." Miss Gamma couldn't help frowning. She suddenly couldn't understand. Is there something wrong with this strong and terrible guy's brain? So, even if it's just a little bit, the possibility is infinitely close to 0. Miss Maid heaved a sigh of relief. "Please become more outstanding. You still lack something." "No. Are you talking to me?" Gamma opened his mouth. If it wasn't for the sharp pain in his body, he almost thought he was dreaming. Remember, if you don't wash up for a day, you can't be forgiven. The war flag seemed to turn into a whip, and with a terrible speed, it hit Miss Gamma directly. She screamed, feeling as if her soul was trembling, and she almost rose to heaven. You have to stand properly, and you have to sit properly. You shouldn't be drunk, and you shouldn't use drunkenness as an excuse to commit murder. With another whip, his skin and flesh were torn apart. Miss Gamma had already sucked in a cold breath and half stepped into the coffin. "Do you remember, Miss Long?" Miss Gamma moved painfully, turning her body over. She was still lying down, but her eyes were blank. "Who the hell is this Miss Long?" "You, cough, cough, cough. Did you mistake me for someone else, cough? Let's take it that way." Miss Maid heaved a sigh of relief. After all, it's impossible for me to guide her personally. Although I'm looking forward to this almost impossible possibility, from a woman's point of view, you're really a hindrance, Miss Long. I am Gamma, not you. Gamma was so angry that his face turned blue. "My apologies." Miss Maid sighed again and waved the long battle flag. "Well, do you remember it, Miss Long?" "I'm not." Do you remember this time, Miss Long? You motherf asterisk her. Do you remember? Haven't you remembered yet? Your comprehension is really disappointing." The screams were endless. Even in the distance, you could hear it clearly at this time. It was the kind of scream that you knew how painful it was. The Queen of Cold Winter had pulled the little princess early and covered the little princess's ears with her hands. This is clearly a one-sided blood abuse. Okay? Why is it like this? They seem to come here this time to rescue the kidnapped little princess. Is she the Witch of Cold Winter? The voice came from not far away. It was Lay Nina's voice. The Queen of Cold Winter frowned. In addition to Gamma, there was another guy who participated in the kidnapping of the little princess. Although Miss Maid was abusing Gamma, it was also because Miss Maid herself was so powerful that people were desperate. The Queen of Cold Winter. Lady Nan felt that she was at most at an ordinary level, but she dared not despise anyone. But since she had already contracted the role of the Queen of Cold Winter, she naturally had to do her best. The Queen of Cold Winter said indifferently, "Why? Are you going to make a move?" "There's no need for that." Lady Nina shook her head. "Even if I defeat you as the Queen of Cold Winter, I can't leave here. The power of the Witch of Cold Winter is beyond imagination. This time, we can only be a little careless." Winter Queen sneered, "A single careless mistake can cost a life." She didn't want to take Gamma's life. Lay Nina said indifferently, "Otherwise, she won't use such a tone. I'm just curious. The snowstorm should have just stopped not long ago. Why does this Witch of Cold Winter seem to have a lot of conflicts with Gamma? How do I King explain it to you? Do I have to tell you that this Gamma is likely to have a reincarnation and snatch a man from the witch you said?" The Queen of Cold Winter chose not to answer. If she said it, The person who was whipped now was definitely herself. Seeing that there was no answer, Nina didn't continue to ask. Her figure flashed and quickly attacked Miss Maid with an exaggerated speed. The black robe took off in the air. Nina was petite and used two short swords. She held one hand backward and the other hand forward. Her body rotated and the short swords slashed at Miss Maid. Just a casual wave of the battle flag in Miss Maid's hand forced the commander of Early Spring to step back. Nina's arms trembled, and her palms almost lost feeling, but she stood firmly in front of Gamma. "Your Highness the Witch of Cold Winter, I'm sorry to meet you in this way for the first time." Miss Maid put away the battle flag and said indifferently, "It doesn't matter. Let's call it a day. After all, I don't want to destroy the rare opportunity between Early Spring and Cold Winter to repair the relationship again." Nina glanced at Gamma at this time. Gamma was like a toy that had been played with, constantly muttering to herself, "Remember, remember." Nina was shocked. She couldn't do a detailed examination at this time, so she didn't know to what extent Gamma's spirit was destroyed. This Witch of Cold Winter was really terrible. She took a deep breath. "I understand. The wedding between His Royal Highness and Princess of Cold Winter will go on smoothly as scheduled. Thank you for your understanding," Miss Maid said with a smile. Nina said seriously, "The wedding can continue, but the other thing can't stop. The shame of the past can only be washed with blood. After all, you killed the last crown prince of Early Spring." Miss Maid said indifferently, "What I need is for this wedding to be complete. For me, the so-called country of Early Spring means that I don't need to welcome tomorrow morning." What impressive confidence. Nina took a deep breath. "Then, all the more reason I can't back down." Miss Maid shook her head and said, "Miss Nina, please go back. I don't intend to hurt you. You can take Miss Gamma away. It's a pity that I'm the commander of the kingdom." Nina also shook her head and said, "Otherwise, I naturally have a reason to leave." As soon as she finished speaking, she heard a rush of figures approaching from afar. Miss Maid glanced at it casually and saw a well-equipped cavalry of 200 to 300 people. At this time, they were rushing toward her aggressively. "You don't think that only two of us are here to take away Her Royal Highness of Cold Winter, right?" Nina said seriously. Originally, they were prepared for the Queen of Cold Winter. But at this moment, the charging cavalry suddenly changed direction and rushed directly to the position of the Queen of Cold Winter and the little princess. Nina was stunned and subconsciously looked. After seeing the leader of the cavalry, a familiar figure, she couldn't help but change her expression slightly. "His Royal Highness?" The leader of this cavalry unit was surprisingly the Prince of Early Spring. "Your Majesty, I'm sorry for what happened tonight." The Prince of Early Spring dismounted at this time and walked quickly to the Queen of Cold Winter. "Don't come over." The Queen of Cold Winter suddenly shivered and waved her hand. Gamma is still lying on the ground. How dare she let the prince get close to her? What if the air that the prince exhaled was accidentally inhaled by her, and the air that she exhaled was accidentally inhaled by the prince? Wouldn't it be worse than physical contact? Miss Maid was standing next to her. Even a dog's head couldn't save her life. "Your Royal Highness." Nina rushed over at this time and even held Gamma together. Not far away, Miss Maid walked back slowly with no expression. The Prince of Early Spring couldn't help but smile bitterly. "I was careless. I didn't expect the opposition to be so tough." "Gamma, how are you?" "The physical injury is still a small matter, but the mental injury." Nina shook her head. The prince approached and directly held Gamma's palm. There was a faint light that began to spread from his body and pass through the palm to Gamma's body. After a while, the faint light that covered Gamma's body began to repair her injuries and even began to calm Gamma's chaotic mind at this time. The air became a lot warmer in an instant. The ice and snow elves in the atmosphere began to swim, and the spring elves made a pleasant laughter. The Queen of Cold Winter couldn't help but be startled at this time. She clearly saw Miss Maid frown imperceptibly. There was nothing wrong with the prince's treatment, but would it make Gamma die more miserably? So beautiful, At this time, the little princess suddenly made a sound of surprise. Everyone looked at her, but she didn't care. There seemed to be stars shining in her eyes. She approached the prince, stretched out her palm, and gently moved in the air. It's the first time I've seen this kind of elf. The little princess held something in her hands at this time. She was very careful and curious. They are spring elves. The prince whispered, "They like you very much. These are the elves I brought back from the beginning of spring. If you like them, you can keep them by your side." The little princess whispered. She had asked the magic mirror about it. The magic mirror's words rang in her ears, causing her heart to beat wildly. Are you really going to give it to me?" "No, I won't." The prince shook his head and said, "They don't belong to anyone. They just like you, so they will stay. This is just a suggestion." "That's true." The little princess nodded. Then she rolled her eyes and said, In that case, I'll also have my friend stay by your side. They seem to also like you very much." After saying those words, the little princess clasped her hands together. Then she slowly opened her palms. A fluorescent light flickered in the places where her palms were opened. "This child has always been following me. I also hope that it will like you and stay by your side." "Thank you." The prince and the princess seemed to be the same kind of people. As long as the two stood together, there was a kind of harmony of life. It was the blend of winter and early spring. The Queen of Cold Winter rubbed her titanium dog eyes at this time and couldn't help but complain in her heart. So, this binding incident finally turned into a blind date? Aren't you afraid that Miss Maid? Huh? Where's Miss Maid? The Queen of Cold Winter subconsciously looked for Miss Maid, but at this time, she couldn't find her. She had quietly left. 7 bearded dwarfs were lying on the table neatly, and their eyes moved uniformly, looking at the figure who was busy in the kitchen. A man, and a very good-looking one at that. A man wearing a fox mask. Who was this person again? When did he come again? Why was he here again? Guys, it's almost done. Can you help to clean up the table? The man with the fox mask suddenly said. Oh, okay. The bearded dwarf boss quickly raised his hand and said. Then the 7 bearded dwarfs lined up in a row, put their hands on each other's shoulders, and quickly walked out of the kitchen. As soon as the bearded dwarfs stepped out, Miss Maid appeared outside the door. She didn't walk in but stood silently outside the door. The light illuminated half of her, and the night swallowed the other half. Boss Luo looked at her. Don't you want to come in? Miss Maid whispered. I lost my composure tonight. Boss Luo wiped his palms, turned his eyes, and smiled. He picked up a small plate and walked to Miss Maid. She looked at him motionlessly. He only focused on placing the small plate on top of her head. Then, he let go of his hands, and the small plate remained motionless on top of her head. No. Boss Luo smiled and said, You see, it's fine. Miss Maid said seriously, Master, I'll stand like this until dawn. It's already dawn. Boss Luo chuckled. On the horizon, there was a ray of dawn, dispersing the night directly, making her whole body in the morning light. The table is cleaned up. We can eat dinner. Hey, boss, why is it dawn? Have you been cleaning up all night? It seems not. I'm so hungry. End of this chapter. Chapter 23-26. When she came back to her senses, Nan Xiaonan was already sitting on the throne of the Snow Palace. She still looked like the Queen of Winter. But how did she come back? And when did the sky turn into morning? She didn't know. She even had a feeling that her body was being taken over. Moreover, it didn't seem to be a day or two ago. Your Majesty, Your Majesty? She wasn't the only one in the palace. There were many officials of the kingdom. The one who was shouting seemed to be the Foreign Affairs Minister of Winter. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking about something just now. Can you say it again? The Queen of Winter said casually. Her Majesty had absolute authority. Even if she didn't listen at all, the officials wouldn't dare to be dissatisfied, let alone being distracted for a while. It's like this, Your Majesty. The Foreign Affairs Minister had to say again. About the wedding list, the Foreign Affairs Minister's voice sounded in the palace, but the Queen of Winter was once again in a daze. She was thinking about another thing. How did the kidnapping incident end up being solved? It was as if someone had pressed the fast-forward button on this part and directly skipped over it. So be it. At least I know what happened. If I didn't have some emergency ability, I wouldn't know what kind of joke I would make if I suddenly sat on the throne and had a meeting with the officials. So, as the Queen of Winter, what should I do? What's wrong with Her Majesty today? She seems to be in a good mood. Indeed, Her Majesty directly approved the suggestions of several officials without any discussion. This made the officials who had been preparing for the suggestion for a long time at a loss. Maybe it's because the princess is about to get married. After all, no matter what, it's a happy thing. That's right, but I didn't expect this suggestion to be approved. It's really... Everyone's eyes suddenly gathered on a noble minister who was shivering and doubting his life. It was this noble who had just proposed in the hall that the whole country should wear a uniform on the wedding day. It was best to use the costumes of winter's traditional festival, the Song of Early Winter. This noble minister only wanted to show that he wasn't a parasite of the kingdom, so he followed the other people's suggestion. He just casually suggested it and never thought that it would be accepted. How would I know that Her Majesty would even approve such a suggestion? He was so anxious that he was about to cry. Who can help me? A group of ministers immediately beat their chests and stamped their feet, sighing, "Do you think the government's decree is a joke? What Her Majesty has already agreed to, other than doing it well, what else can you do? You should think about how to persuade the people." In the fountain square of the royal city, a group of soldiers walked in unison. Asakes and the others who were setting up around the square couldn't help but frown. Madanzo was deep in thought. Ninshaunen had been missing since last night. The most important thing was that it didn't have the memory of an entire night. It felt like the sky had turned cold with a bayou sound. The most important thing was that it hadn't slept well. When it woke up, it felt very sleepy. Who is Asakes, Isabel, Madanzo, and Kaer Lily? At this time, a person walked out from the group of soldiers and asked loudly. Asakes and the others looked at each other, but no one stood out. "You guys come here." The head of the soldiers suddenly took out some portraits. "It's you guys come here." He said to ask them to come over, but the group of soldiers had already surrounded them aggressively. Mr. Asakes frowned and subconsciously glanced at Isabel. "Let's see the situation first. There are too many uncertainties in this magic world." Isabel suggested conservatively. Madanzo walked to the head of the soldiers and asked curiously, "Excuse me, did we do something wrong? Someone wants to see you." The head of the soldiers said indifferently. Madanzo asked, "Can we know who it is?" "You'll know when you get there." They didn't expect that this group of soldiers would directly send them to the Winter Palace and arrange for them to stay in a rather luxurious suite. "Is it the princess we met the other day?" Asakes suddenly thought of this possibility. The only person he knew in this palace was probably the little princess of the kingdom that he had met once. No need to think about it. "She's here." Madanzo shook her head and looked directly at the door. She had already sensed who was coming in. Hey. Hello, everyone." "New? Yulia?" Sure enough, seeing Yulia coming in, Madanzo directly rolled her eyes. "Miss Yulia, you were also brought here by the soldiers?" Kaer Lily's eyes widened at this time. "They didn't do anything to you, right? I asked the soldiers to bring you here." Yulia smiled at this time. "Everyone, I found a new job for you, so you don't have to be exposed to the sun in the fountain square anymore." "What is it this time?" Obviously, Isabel didn't rejoice too early. Exposure to the sun. In this terrible winter weather, even if one was baked under the sun, one's body would feel cold. Serving dishes at the wedding banquet of the early spring prince and the chilly winter princess. Yulia said at this time with a smile, "This is a job that can earn a lot of tips." Obviously, Isabel didn't believe this nonsense, but frowned and said, "How did you call the palace soldiers?" "You may not believe it." Yulia, at this time, exultant, "I felt a little bored last night, so I wanted to go out for a walk. I didn't expect that I would have to help an old granny who fell on the ground. That old granny stuck to me and insisted on thanking me. Then, she brought me to the palace." Old granny. Mr. Asakes couldn't help but frown. "Yes. After I entered the palace, I learned that this old granny was the most senior in the palace. This old granny saw that I was pitiful, so she asked me if I wanted a high-paying job." After a while, I also introduce you to her. Yulia, at this time, blinked its big shining eyes at this time. We can still live in the palace, but it's just a servant's room. As it said this, Yulia clapped its hands, and immediately several young maids walked in directly with the waiters' uniforms. Everyone, be more active. Before the wedding banquet, there's a short pre-job training. The wedding time has been fixed. Madanzo suddenly asked. It's fixed. Yulia nodded. Tomorrow night. So soon? Madanzo couldn't help but be startled. It remembered that there was still a week from the beginning of the work of the mine to the wedding day. Had the time on the page been accelerated? Before it could ask, Asakes and the others had already been pushed by a group of maids to change their clothes and participate in the pre-job training. When only it and Yulia were left, Madanzo asked curiously, So what exactly are you doing? Yulia's figure began to transform into the Winter Queen. Morgan? Madanzo narrowed her eyes. Morgan is dead. The Queen of Winter shook her head, and it's the kind that doesn't even leave a trace. She has offended the maid. Madanzo shook her head. That guy from the Celtic divine system has never been very smart. So, you're directly replacing the role of the queen? This is also Miss Ye's intention. Queen of Winter, Nan Xiaonan smiled bitterly at this time. I can't let the little princess do both the wedding and the funeral, right? Okay. Madanzo shrugged. If these were all arranged by Joan of Arc, then it really had no objection. After all, it couldn't beat her. The bigger the fist, the better the reason. This was the reality of the world. This time I summoned you to the palace. On the one hand, I don't want you to worry about my whereabouts, and on the other hand, it's more convenient to watch over them. Nan Xiaonan smiled bitterly. After all, you should also know the background of Asakes and Isabel. Although Yi doesn't mean to admit it, I can't pretend that I don't know. What if one day Yi suddenly softens her heart? The Joan of Arc, I know, never knows how to write the word soft-hearted. Madanzo put her hands together. Anyway, you actually want me to help you watch these guys, right? In short, there will be no danger in the palace. As long as they don't run around and let the wedding pass safely, we can leave this page world. So simple. Madanzo couldn't help but be startled. Joan of Arc told you this? In the Winter Kingdom, there was no danger. The entire Winter Kingdom was filled with a kind of auspicious atmosphere. They came from the page world one by one, and they were all very dangerous. At this time, they were a little at a loss. So simple. Nan Xiaonan was also a little absent-minded at this time. She muttered to herself. But before we arrived, Ms. Yi had already arranged everything. Madanzo didn't say anything. It was just that its journey had been rather difficult, and unknowingly, it had developed a self-centered mindset. It thought of itself as the only protagonist, but in the world of frigid winter, there was almost nothing for it to do. When it suddenly woke up, it felt a sense of dislocation. Nan Xiaonan, this world of winter may be a relatively early time period. It suddenly said, Huh? Madanzo thought for a while and said, In the world of Qingdan, Kaz, and the others are already dead. Here, they're still alive. And strangely, according to past experience, the male and female protagonists in Book of Gaia are very close. But here, Nan Xiaonan smiled bitterly and said, I don't understand either. I secretly asked. The king of the kingdom of early spring is not Califar. There is no Cicero here, let alone Prince Desolate and Princess Angelique. The world evolved from the pages of Book of Gaia is full of bitterness and hatred. But here in winter, it is too peaceful and beautiful. Tomorrow night, there should be an answer. Madanzo muttered, Maybe everything looks good, but it is just the beginning. The primordial disappeared in the end, and the ending is already destined. Nan Xiaonan didn't say anything. Ever since she became a black soul, her impulse to find the primordial had almost disappeared. This feeling disappeared, and it directly led to a change in her thinking. She began to think that it was not worth it for the beings of the void dimension to search for the primordial tirelessly. Even if they didn't search for the primordial as immortal beings of the void dimension, as long as they were willing, all of them could live well. She shook her head and walked to Madanzo. With one hand on her waist, she stretched out the other hand and poked Madanzo's head. "What are you thinking about? You are just a side character now, do you understand?" Colorful salutes bloomed in the sky. The Winter King city was very lively today, and there was ceremonial music playing everywhere in the city. King's palace, the little princess's bedroom. The maids were dressing up the little princess who was about to get married. There was no need for any makeup, just a simple hairstyle, because the little princess was a unique beauty, and her youth was invincible. Her Royal Highness usually likes to talk. Why did she become so quiet today? The maids asked with a smile. They treated the little princess as their own little sister, and their daily interactions were almost like that of a family, very casual. The little princess said with a bitter face, "The granny who teaches etiquette said that today is the most important day, so I must be dignified. Every step of the way has to be taken in 2 steps. So tiring. I haven't eaten anything since this morning. Also, this dress is so tight that I can't breathe, but I can only squeeze out a little bit, so angry." "Her Royal Highness, you still have room to grow," the maid said with a smile. "In a few years, you won't need to squeeze, and can squeeze." "I'm going to die." The little princess's face suddenly turned red like an apple. "There is still some time. Let us secretly get you some food." The maid smiled and said, "The bride can't eat on the wedding day. This rule is too inhumane. You are the best." The maids left the bedroom with a smile. Although the little princess said that she didn't care, after the maids left, she still walked to the mirror and fiddled with it. After a while, there was a knock on the door, but it wasn't the maids who had just left, but a new face. "You are?" The little princess looked at the other person in surprise. Not to mention the maids in the palace. Even if it was the residents of the Winter Royal City, she could name them. She had never seen this maid before. "Greetings, Your Royal Highness. My name is Remia." The maid smiled at this time. "Dawn Manor recommended me. Today is the first time I work." "Dawn Manor? Oh, it's my sister's." The little princess blinked. "Hello. Remia, nice to meet you. What is this?" "This is food for you." The maid approached and lifted the cloth on the tray. There was a bright red apple here. "Just right. I'm starving." The little princess didn't think much, directly picked up the apple, and took a bite gently. This chapter ends. Chapter 23-27. Winter Royal City, Guest House. Gamma and Renina were carefully tidying up his Royal Highness attire, and their faces were black all the way. Especially Miss Gamma, who had a hopeless expression. She said that she had fallen out of love today and felt rather bad. "Renina, how many wives can a man in the kingdom of early spring take?" the chief mage suddenly asked. "1," Miss Gamma muttered. "You say if we launch a coup, is the success rate high? Basically, it will fail." Miss Gamma was like a deflated balloon, and the whole person squatted in the corner in a daze. She was not in a good state these days, probably because of the psychological shadow of the Witch of the Cold Winter. Renina shook his head, knowing what his colleague was thinking. With the existence of the Winter Witch, this wedding probably could not be ruined. Then, only by solving the problem at the source. Since there was no position, then create one. Just to create one more position, there would be the idea of launching a coup. Renina was still shocked. This woman was really savage. "I think, in fact, when His Royal Highness marriage changes, it will be more hopeful," Renina said indifferently. "In addition, after His Royal Highness marriage changes, I have already reserved the first substitute." "When did this happen?" Miss Gamma's eyes widened in disbelief, as if she had missed 100 years. "I said, I'm still here." His Royal Highness could not help but show a bitter smile. He gently knocked on the table. "Well, I'll do the rest myself. You guys go and change clothes. I've already asked someone to prepare new formal attire for you. This is an order." "Good." The two of them walked out of the room dejectedly. His Royal Highness shook his head. He looked at the time and felt that something was missing. That day, the man who wore a fox mask and claimed to be the best man of the day had not appeared until now. In fact, he had only appeared once. It was as if it was just a joke. Will appear. His Royal Highness muttered to himself. His gaze suddenly fell on the corner of the room. There was a mirror covered by a black cloth. This was the magic mirror that was dug out from the collapsed mill after the kidnapping incident. According to legend, it was the magic mirror that could answer any question. The magic mirror had been moved into the prince's room for a long time, but it had never been opened. In the past few days, Gamma and Lenina had tried various methods to get close to this magic mirror. However, since the prince was here, they naturally couldn't succeed. His Highness the Prince suddenly coughed twice. While muttering to himself, he had already arrived before the magic mirror. Then, he lifted the black cloth. There was no reflection on the pitch-black surface of the mirror. However, a small blue bird slowly appeared. "Please tell me your question." His Royal Highness was silent for a long time before he smiled and said, "Is the weather good today? Today will be a glorious day." The magic mirror quickly gave the answer. "Then I look forward to it." The prince nodded and covered the magic mirror again with a black cloth. "I can answer all your questions." The magic mirror's voice rang out again, as if it was making a final effort to not be covered. "There is no need to restrain yourself. If you want to know something, then bravely say it out loud." His Royal Highness the Prince stopped and looked at the magic mirror. "Any questions? Any questions?" The magic mirror proudly said. His Royal Highness the Prince thought for a moment and said, "If I knew that I was going to die tomorrow, how would I feel?" The small blue bird's mirror spirit instantly stopped moving. The black mirror began to boil like boiling water. Even the frame of the mirror was trembling slightly. "You will be sad." After a long while, the magic mirror's voice rang out again. However, this time, it sounded more like a probing question. "Why would I be sad?" His Royal Highness the Prince asked curiously. "Because you know that you're going to die, so you will feel sad." The magic mirror's voice calmed down. "But what if I don't feel sad?" His Royal Highness the Prince shook his head. "No, you will definitely feel sad. No one would not feel sad about their own death. You are not me. How would you know? I am the omnipotent magic mirror. Of course I know. You can know the future?" His Royal Highness the Prince suddenly asked. "Of course. I am the omnipotent magic mirror. Do you know when you'll be broken?" His Royal Highness the Prince asked with a smile. "What is the exact time?" The magic mirror began to boil again. After a long while, the magic mirror spirit's voice rang out again. "I am a magic mirror that will not be destroyed. I will not be broken. Then I will break you now." After saying that, His Royal Highness the Prince casually picked up a cup. "Tell me, will I really break you?" The pitch-black mirror started to roll again, and the shaking became even more intense. This time, the mirror spirit didn't speak for a long time. In the end, His Royal Highness the Prince slowly put down the cup and said softly, "So, you're not omnipotent. At least you cannot change my actions, right?" Crack! A crack suddenly appeared on the surface of the pitch-black mirror. His Royal Highness the Prince stretched out his hand to wipe it. The moment his finger touched the crack expanded instantly. The pitch-black mirror was instantly shattered. A faint blue light slowly flew out of the sunglasses and finally landed on His Royal Highness the Prince's shoulder. It was the mirror spirit of the magic mirror, Bluebird. "Thank you, Prince of Early Spring. You let me walk out of the evil curse," Bluebird said in a low voice. "You are an elf?" His Royal Highness the Prince was surprised. "How did you get sealed in the mirror?" "It is the curse of the god of darkness, Gulala." Bluebird flapped its wings and slowly flew out. "Prince of Early Spring, you cannot marry the Princess of Cold Winter, because she is the incarnation of the god of darkness, Gulala. She will bring endless darkness and coldness to the land." His Royal Highness the Prince was silent for a while. "There is still some time before we go out. Tell me about it." "Royal Palace, Princess Bedroom." "Your Royal Highness, we are back." "Your Royal Highness?" They pushed open the bedroom door with some fresh pastries and fruits in their hands. After the maids entered, they saw Her Royal Highness the Princess sitting on the ground, lying motionless at the end of the bed. She didn't respond to their calls. The maids were shocked. "Your Royal Highness." They hurriedly ran to Her Royal Highness' side as if their souls had left their bodies. They even nervously swallowed their saliva and extended their trembling hands. Then, Her Royal Highness opened her eyes in a daze. "What happened to you?" She rubbed her eyes and even yawned slightly. The maids heaved a sigh of relief. "Your Royal Highness, why did you fall asleep sitting on the ground?" "Too tired." Her Royal Highness shook her head and said, "After eating Remia's apple, I felt sleepy." Unknowingly, "Where is Remia?" "Who is Remia?" one of the maids asked curiously. "She is new." "Strange, where is she?" Her Royal Highness blinked in confusion. She was still here. Maybe she had something to do and left. The maids looked at each other in confusion. "Your Royal Highness, what are you wearing on your chest?" the maid asked curiously. "It is so beautiful." Her Royal Highness was wearing a dark golden gem brooch. "Strange, when did I get one? But it is so beautiful." "Where if it is?" The maids nodded and said, "Your Royal Highness, it is getting late. Let's prepare the rest of the things." His Royal Highness, in early spring, should be on his way to the palace at this time. "We have to prepare the clothes for the song of early winter." Her Royal Highness nodded with a slightly red face and muttered, "I don't know what Mother was thinking. She actually thought of this idea. Really, Your Majesty, your dress is ready." The maids carefully walked into the Queen of Winter's bedroom at this time. The Queen's power was too great, and the people who serve her had to be afraid of her. However, Her Royal Highness seemed to be much easier to get along with. "Oh, is that so? Let me see." The Queen of Winter nodded casually. Finally, this day had come. She was secretly happy. As long as this wedding was completed, she probably didn't have to wear the Queen's disguise. Meeting every day, it was very annoying. The maids quickly presented the gown to her. The Queen of Winter couldn't wait to open the brocade box. Then she blinked and shivered. She picked up the dress from the brocade box with both hands. A rope was wrapped around it, and there was only a palm-sized black ice silk cloth in the middle. What is this?" Replying to Your Majesty, "This is your dress." The maid said with a trembling voice, "This was made by the best tailor in the capital overnight. It was made with ice lotus shreds, the most intimate material." You call this thing a dress?" The Queen of Winter instantly felt like she was struck by lightning. "Isn't this ding that what?" "Yes." The maid nodded. "Isn't this the decree issued by Your Royal Highness to unify the traditional costume of the Song of Early Winter? This bikini two-piece suit is only worn by Your Royal Highness, and it uses the least amount of cloth." The Queen of Winter's legs went soft, and she sat directly on the chair. She swallowed and asked, Who can tell me what this Song of Early Winter traditional festival is?" "It's a traditional winter sport. In early winter, it's a race to cross the ice river." The Queen of Winter took a deep breath. She quickly ran to the window, opened the window, and looked out. She saw that there was a long line outside the palace. They were all the guests who were waiting to enter the palace to attend the banquet. Looking at a large group of women in swimsuits who could still play tricks, as well as a large group of guests wearing beach pants and beach shoes and swimming rings, the Winter Queen almost blacked out. "It's over. It's over. It's over. I'm really finished this time." The Queen of Winter wailed. Is there any secret escape tunnel in our palace?" It seems like there isn't one." "Your Royal Highness. Your Royal Highness. Your Royal Highness, what's wrong with you?" "Not good." Her Royal Highness fainted. "Someone come." Deep in the palace, although it was the day of a national celebration, the soldiers stationed here didn't dare to leave because Her Royal Highness had ordered that as long as she didn't give the order, the soldiers couldn't leave. The soldiers didn't leave, but they weren't guarding either. The soldiers at the checkpoints were lying on the ground at this time. In the depths of the huge dungeon, there was only a walking figure at this time. The soldier, Stanley. He walked through the dungeon and finally came to the cell with many ice sculptures. Stanley looked at the ice sculptures in the cell, and his face changed slightly. "These are the managers of the 7 capitals." From the expression of these ice sculptures, one could see how frightened they were when they were frozen. Stanley pried open the door lock with his sword and walked to the ice sculptures. His face became more and more solemn. He silently counted the number of ice sculptures and the corresponding identity. Finally, with a trace of fear, He walked out of the cell. He continued to go deeper. This wasn't the deepest place. Strange. Why is the cell open? The cell was open, and one could see at a glance that it was empty. Stanley frowned and went deeper with more caution. In the innermost cell, he saw another ice sculpture. The moment he saw the ice sculpture, the solemn expression on Stanley's face disappeared and was replaced by anger and fear. St. John. He couldn't believe what he saw, but the truth was right in front of him. In this dungeon, everything he encountered was no longer a situation he could handle. Stanley took a deep breath and quickly turned around. He knew he had to leave this place as soon as possible. When he turned around, a figure appeared in front of him. Stanley was taken aback. He instinctively stepped back and even drew his sword. Who is it? In front of him was a man wearing a fox mask. Do you know who is inside? The man in the fox mask suddenly asked. Stanley's heart trembled and he subconsciously said, I don't know. The man in the fox mask suddenly said, Do you still wear your shoes? Stanley's face changed slightly. He seemed to be more nervous than the previous question. What shoes? I don't know what you were talking about. I am talking about Cinderella's crystal shoes. The man in the fox mask smiled and said, That pair of shoes with magic. Aren't you wearing them, Miss Assman? How did you know? The long sword in Stanley's hand fell to the floor, and his face was full of fear. This is what I left in your clothing store. The man in the fox mask whispered. Miss Assman, have you forgotten me? It's you. She cried out in shock. She saw a faint light appear, and the soldier, Stanley, had turned into a beautiful woman wearing a pair of crystal shoes. A beautiful woman with a pale face. The tailor of the clothing store in Freedom City, Miss Assman. Chapter 23-28. The crystal shoes emitted a beautiful light. No matter where they were, they would be eye-catching. Miss Assman was not as nervous as she was at the beginning. Perhaps it was because she knew that the person in front of her was the owner of the crystal shoes. I have a feeling that as long as I keep wearing this pair of shoes, one day I will see you again, she said slowly. Now my feeling has come true. Do you know that it was all because of this pair of shoes that I survived so many difficulties? How can I thank you, my savior? Her attitude was sincere and fervent, as if she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Fox Mask, Boss Luo said casually, I think, even without this pair of shoes, Miss Assman can still escape. No. Miss Assman shook her head. You don't know how a weak woman like me survived in the God-blessed city, facing a world that has lost all morals and laws. Boss Luo smiled. Indeed, a woman can not only survive, but also reorganize the underground order of the God-blessed city in the next 10 years. Miss Assman, your efforts must be more precious than your talent. I have a feeling. She suddenly walked in front of Boss Luo. Her eyes were filled with admiration. Her voice was soft like a lover's whisper. You can bring me out of here, right? Boss Luo smiled. No matter what answer I give, Miss Assman will still attack me, right? How can that be? She looked at him in shock. Miss Assman, do you still remember these? Boss Luo opened his palm. In his palm, there were 2 pieces of jewelry. If Nan Xiaonan was here, she would immediately recognize the origin of these 2 pieces of jewelry. These 2 pieces of jewelry were given to Kay Lily and Medanzo by Miss Assman, who was once the owner of the dungeon, Ellen. There was also her own pair of earrings, which were used for the vampire selection. However, Nan Xiaonan's earrings had been transformed into a key to open the door to another world by Griffith, who had fallen in a Fairmont. In a previous world, the lie came true. Miss Assman's eyes flickered and showed a trace of doubt. Are these also props like the crystal shoes? Not as magical as the crystal shoes. Boss Luo said indifferently. These 2 pieces of jewelry are just ordinary jewelry, but there is something hidden inside. Under Miss Assman's flickering eyes, Boss Luo closed his palm. When he opened it again, the jewelry in his palm was shattered. Only 2 small black button-like things were left. Bug, Boss Luo said indifferently. Moreover, it was created with the myriad element. Miss Assman, you're more familiar with the model. As for the origin of this bug, it should be from Freedom City. I don't quite understand. It doesn't matter. Boss Luo shook his head. The remaining things in his palm were also shattered at this time. As I said, the effort you put in will definitely be more precious than your talent. So, no matter what you did in the previous page world, whether it was for yourself or as a spy for the Pope, I have no reason to criticize a lady who bravely wants to survive. Miss Assman suddenly fell silent. She stared at the fox mask in front of her. Fox, is it as cunning as a fox? You, what else do you know? She asked coldly. Boss Luo said, we should have met even earlier. I'm talking about when we were in Donnermy Village. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, she quickly retreated and directly put on a convenient punch posture. Let me guess. Boss Luo said, you're not a follower of the president of the City of Dawn. That's for sure. After all, although Lilith vaguely knows about what happened in Donnermy Village, she shouldn't have the means to intervene. You are also not Michael's people. Otherwise, you wouldn't have needed to escape from Donnermy Village. Miss Assman couldn't help but frown. Who is Michael? Boss Luo said casually, don't worry about it. Just treat it as my name for St. John. St. John doesn't have a name like me. Miss Assman's frown deepened. She had a strange feeling towards the name. It was as if it was very familiar, but also extremely unfamiliar. In her memory, it was even more so. There wasn't before, but there is now, Boss Luo said indifferently. He didn't intend to explain the reason. When Michael tried to use Jacques d'Arc's yearning and all the hatred and despair stripped from St. Joan's execution to create a new saint, Boss Luo felt offended and directly erased Michael's existence temporarily. Then his cognition was automatically corrected. Everything that Michael had done was temporarily replaced by St. John. It was equivalent to temporarily overlapping Michael and St. John. As for Michael, after being stripped of his existence, he was the most ordinary person. Then, he was met with misfortune and almost died in the hands of the president of the City of Dawn, Balaam. In the depths of the dungeon, Miss Assman was still fully alert. I'm very curious. What kind of background do you have to make St. John lose his composure when he first met you in Donnermy Village? Boss Luo smiled slightly and said, I'm also very curious about who Miss Assman is working for. The Archangel turned a blind eye to everything that happened in Donnermy Village in the painting. In the end, she even wanted to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor and hid the whole thing. But the first to carry out this plan was you guys. We just hope that the City of Freedom can have a real saint, Miss Assman said seriously. Miss Assman said seriously, it's the original saint, not the fake Lilith. She's not worthy. It wasn't just Lily who was unworthy. In Boss Luo's opinion, no one in this world had such qualifications. Miss Assman, are you a believer of the Saint of Freedom? No. Miss Assman shook her head. I'm not a believer of anyone. I only believe in one thing, and that is order. If I have to be a believer of anyone, then I must be a believer of order. Boss Luo was deep in thought. You are actually the same as Morgan, right? At this time, she suddenly said, including Calvin, you're all reborn from the outer gods. Why do you think so? Boss Luo asked curiously. Only this can explain why the Archangel almost lost her composure when she saw you in Donnermy Village. You must be a powerful outer god. To the Holy Light Kingdom, I am indeed an outsider. Are you interested in joining us? Miss Assman's eyes suddenly showed a hint of fanaticism. Don't be in a hurry to refuse, because you still don't know what the real us is. Boss Luo said, what is it? Miss Assman said seriously, the kingdom of heaven spreads its faith in countless worlds. The spread of its faith also means that a large number of different faiths are destroyed, and countless gods fall. In the kingdom of holy light, there's more than one outer god, Morgan, and more than one Calvin. There's also more than one outer god. After so many years, is it true that only Morgan and Calvin have awakened? You are the outer god organization? Boss Luo blinked. There was no need to guess. Even if Miss Maid had raised him into a cripple, he would still be like him. More or less. Miss Assman nodded. How is it? You have been reborn from the fall of the holy light. Don't you feel lonely? Perhaps, among us, there are former companions of yours. You have a lot of people, Boss Luo said after thinking for a while. Miss Assman smiled proudly and said, "We exist within the 7 capitals. We observe everything in secret, and at the same time, we do our best to find every outer god that is born. We do our best to protect them from being discovered by Tianming." "Just observe?" Boss Luo said indifferently. "Observe for what?" "I'm sorry. I can only tell you after you have truly joined us." Miss Assman shook her head at this moment. I said, "You don't have to rush to refuse, but you also don't have to rush to agree. Use your eyes to feel it." Boss Luo suddenly chuckled and said, "In that case, the Holy Light Kingdom, the Kingdom of Heaven, really has a lot of mess. Purely from the perspective of management, it can be said that it is not well managed. If the Holy Light Kingdom continued to be tossed about for a long time, it might be difficult to continue. Not to mention the distant future, even the following rent might become a problem. The shop was a place to do business. Although Boss Luo's main god's world was difficult to defeat, it could not withstand his recent reckless spending. For example, the conversation with the previous shop manager in the long river of time, or depriving Michael of his existence. These are not simple things that could be compared to simply fulfilling an ordinary person's wish. Any changes that involved the powerful life in the dimensional void were extremely costly, the time of his existence. Management? Miss Assman frowned. She felt that this analogy was inappropriate, but she did not say anything. Since it was the rebirth of an outer god, there would be some strange behaviors and opinions. This guy wearing a fox mask was easy to communicate with. "Miss Assman, regarding your suggestion, I will consider it carefully." Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "If possible, can you arrange for me to meet the person behind you? I can't make the decision." Miss Assman smiled bitterly. "What's more, I've cut off all contact with the outside world here, so I can't promise you. You just need to return to the free cities, right?" Boss Luo asked directly. "I can only promise you that I will try my best to fight for you." Miss Assman took a deep breath. "Because it is very noble, and its identity can't be exposed casually. You have a way to help me leave this damn place. Then, please send my regards to the person behind you." Wait. She only felt that she was suddenly spinning, and her consciousness seemed to be thrown into a roller. The light and shadow in front of her overlapped, and the sound gradually became noisy. The feeling of crowding arose spontaneously, and the air was mixed with all kinds of turbid smells. Miss Assman looked up subconsciously. She was on a street full of people, and at this moment, the people on the street were nervously staring at something, the venue of the Holy Maiden ceremony. I'm really back." An unreal feeling made Miss Assman subconsciously clench her fists until a heavy feeling rose in her heart. She heard a familiar voice calling her. Yes, this familiar voice was enough to prove everything. She was really back to the free cities. Why is the Good Friday resurrection ceremony still going on? Miss Assman was shocked. Who is hosting it? Winter, the palace of ice and snow. The best doctors in the kingdom walked into Her Majesty's bedroom. Her Majesty the Queen had fainted for unknown reasons, and she hadn't woken up yet. This was a national emergency, especially when the wedding between Her Royal Highness and the Prince of the Kingdom of Early Spring was about to take place at this critical juncture. Everything that could be thought of had been tried, but the doctors couldn't do anything. The ministers of the kingdom were like ants on a hot pan. This news hadn't spread yet, and the news of Her Majesty the Queen's coma was blocked, but it wouldn't be blocked for long. The soldiers reported that the Prince of Early Spring had just entered the palace. "Everyone, please think of a solution." "Doctors? You're the best doctors in the kingdom. Don't you have any solution?" An old man wearing beach shorts that exposed his ribs said with a grave expression, "Sirs, I'm afraid that Her Majesty isn't sick. I suspect that Her Majesty has been cursed by an evil curse." "Curse?" Everyone couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. "That's right." The old doctor took a deep breath and said, "I've only seen such symptoms in an ancient book. I'm afraid that it's the curse of the god of darkness, Gulala." "Is there a way to save her?" the old doctor muttered. If it's really the curse of the god of darkness, Gulala, I'm afraid that there's only one way to wake Her Majesty up. But, no matter how difficult it is, the ministers said in unison. The old doctor said, spring is the day when all things come back to life. It said that the royal family of early spring has the power to break the curse of the god of darkness, Gulala. As long as the royal family of early spring gives Her Majesty the kiss of true love, Her Majesty the Queen should be able to wake up. It's recorded in the book. But where can we find the royal family of early spring? A minister said bitterly and then patted his head. The prince. This isn't good. The prince of early spring is going to marry the princess. If Her Majesty can't wake up this wedding, I'm afraid that winter will become a laughing stock. Everyone, think of a solution. Well, if there's really no solution? Chapter 23-29. In Her Majesty's bedroom, the Queen of Cold Winter didn't know about the discussion between the nobles, ministers, and doctors outside, and the discussion seemed to have reached a unified consensus. She was just thinking about when the maids standing by the bed could leave. She had been lying for too long, and her back was itchy, and she wanted to scratch it. She wouldn't wake up even if she was beaten to death. What a joke. If she really wore those 2 ropes and palm-sized cloth to attend, she was afraid that it was not something that could be solved at the Black Soul Messenger Commendation Conference. Now the whole palace was full of swimsuit Patty, and she felt that she was in danger. Just lie like this. I feel that I can lie down until the end of time. In order to make the coma more realistic, the Queen of Cold Winter even directly sealed all her senses, making herself look like she had a sudden strange disease or was cursed. But her back was really itchy. His Royal Highness in early spring, when he entered the palace. In fact, before leaving the inn, he had already heard about it. But when he saw this song of early winter, in full dress, he still felt shocked again. The men were not the problem, the ladies were the focus. A group of envoys from the kingdom of early spring, as if walking into the Grand View Garden, carefully observed the winter women who were wearing swimsuits and showing their beautiful figures. This was a good opportunity to learn the traditional culture of winter. It felt that such culture could be introduced into the kingdom of early spring, and it was not impossible to reproduce this song of early spring. You are not allowed to look. Miss Gamma suddenly shouted angrily beside His Royal Highness. Even if you ask like this, I will. His Royal Highness shook his head helplessly, unless he walked with his eyes closed. A group of winter soldiers wearing big black pants, helmets, and spears suddenly walked quickly to the front of the kingdom of early spring. The leader was the Foreign Affairs Minister of early spring. Your Royal Highness, can I have a word with you? The Foreign Affairs Minister came up with a dignified face. There are some very urgent matters, and we hope to ask for your opinion. I don't know what it is. The Prince of Early Spring was thoughtful. However, the Foreign Affairs Minister of Winter insisted that this matter could only be discussed in private. The Prince of Early Spring pondered for a while and agreed. But then, the Foreign Affairs Minister actually brought His Highness directly into the depths of the palace, to a place where many people were present. Here, those who could be seen seemed to be the nobles and ministers who held the greatest authority in winter. Everyone, I brought the Prince of Early Spring here. The Foreign Affairs Minister coughed twice. Who will explain this? There is no such thing as an iron-headed fellow. The Foreign Affairs Minister could only sigh and look at Prince Early Spring helplessly. Your Highness, our country's queen has been cursed. I'm afraid you're the only one who can undo it. Otherwise, I'm afraid we can't hold today's wedding. Curse? Yes, the Foreign Affairs Minister said solemnly. I'm afraid it's the curse of the legendary god of darkness, Gulala. I heard that only the divine power of the royal family in early spring can remove it. His Royal Highness said, This is what I should do. You don't have to do this. Is Her Majesty all right? May I see her? That's natural. The Foreign Affairs Minister pulled the old doctor out at this time. This is the wizard doctor who discovered the curse. He'll tell you what to do. Please, Your Highness. I hope you can help winter survive this crisis. The Prince of Early Spring nodded gently and followed the wizard doctor into the Queen's bedroom. The Curse of the God of Darkness, Gulala. Interestingly, before the prince left the hotel, he happened to learn some things about the God of Darkness from the magic mirror elf. It felt like there were a lot fewer people. The Winter Queen couldn't always close herself. She would open her perception from time to time. If there was no one in the bedroom, wouldn't she be able to scratch an itch? Who came in this time? These ministers really didn't give up. That's it. Your Highness, now you're the only one who can remove Her Majesty's curse in a short time. I understand your difficulties, but this kind of treatment method is really treatment method? What method? His Royal Highness. His Royal Highness of Early Spring? Why is he here? What did he come here? The Winter Queen was shocked to her soul. Your Highness, you must save this country. Sorry, I'm afraid I can't do it. The prince shook his head. At least, I can't do it with this method. Your Highness, this matter will not be known by a third party. The wizard doctor's voice sounded very determined at this time. After you complete this matter, I will take this secret and leave Snow Mountain. From then on, I will end my life. What method is it? The Winter Queen's heart was itching. You don't have to do this. The prince said, it's not that I don't want to, but the so-called true love's kiss is indeed something I can't do. How can I make myself love Her Majesty now? Besides, I'm about to. True love's kiss is just a saying. It doesn't have to be the love between a man and a woman. The wizard doctor said with a righteous face, great love is invisible. A wise king has the mind to love the world. As long as your Highness takes out the great love to save the world, isn't it more precious than the true love between a man and a woman? The prince seemed to be moved. Okay, I'll try. Please, Your Highness. Your Highness. The wizard doctor let out a sigh of relief and slowly turned his back to her. The Prince of Early Spring approached the bed and looked at the Winter Queen, who seemed to be sleeping soundly. He whispered softly, Your Majesty, I'm afraid I'll offend you. I hope that the two countries of winter and early spring can coexist peacefully. He slowly leaned over with a solemn and focused expression. The Winter Queen, on the bed, was motionless. She was as steady as an old dog, but her heart was extremely flustered. WOC, WOC, what's going on? She was just lying here, and this disaster came from the sky. If this kiss really came, wouldn't the maid kill her as a sacrifice? Just when the Winter Queen was about to open her eyes and announce that she had recovered, the Prince of Early Spring whispered in her ear, Your Majesty, you're not cursed at all, right? She simply opened her eyes. As long as this kiss didn't come, she would be fine even if she wore her underwear, not to mention that she was only faking her illness. Let the wizard doctor go out first, the Prince of Early Spring said abruptly. The Winter Queen blinked, then she pretended to be seriously ill and slowly sat up. The wizard doctor heard the movement and was excited. Your Majesty, that's great. This method is really effective. The ancient books didn't lie to me. That's great. Looking at the old man who was in tears, he thought, so you're just taking a gamble on the kiss of true love? I'm fine. The Winter Queen sighed at this time and slowly said, You can leave first. I have something to say to the prince. Oh, after you leave, go directly to the Snow Mountain to end your life. Your Majesty. The wizard doctor was stunned. The Winter Queen said indifferently, Although I can't wake up, I can hear the sound outside. I'll remember what you said. You're so loyal. I have to fulfill your wish. Why don't you get out of here? Perhaps it was because the Queen of Winter's power was too strong. The wizard doctor was scared out of his wits just by being glared at. He hurriedly crawled out of the Queen's bedroom. The Winter Queen didn't have time to care about this guy. She was still having a headache on how to deal with the Prince of Early Spring. The Winter Queen sat upright and showed a forced smile. Your Majesty, now there are only the two of us left. If you have something to say, just say it. I heard that Your Majesty has always had a magic mirror, right? The prince smiled slightly. The Winter Queen said casually, Your Majesty, are you interested in the magic mirror? At this moment, a blue light rushed out of the Prince of Early Spring's sleeve and then landed on the prince's shoulder. It was a bird emitting blue light. The Winter Queen opened her mouth as if she was moved. The blue bird sneered and said, Winter Queen, You didn't expect me to be able to break the curse of the magic mirror and regain freedom. What's the situation now? The Winter Queen was stunned. The blue bird said angrily, "You're still asking the obvious. I've told the Prince of Early Spring everything you've done. Today it's your end. You servant of Gulala. You won't succeed in your scheme. Is there any misunderstanding between you two?" The blue bird flapped its wings. "You're the servant of the god of darkness, hiding in the Winter Queen. In order to become the Queen of Winter, you didn't hesitate to kill the previous Prince of Early Spring and frame the Princess of Winter. Finally, you poisoned the king. You're so vicious. Not only that, you're even heartless. You used yourself as a vessel to give birth to the demon fetus and tried to revive the god of darkness again. You said Snow White is the god of darkness." The Winter Queen stood up in shock. The blue bird flapped its wings and flew high. Bluebird Guard. I'm the guardian spirit of the atmosphere. I won't let your conspiracy come true. Today I'll kill you. Prince of Early Spring, please use my power." The blue bird turned into a ray of light and went into the prince's hand. Then a gorgeous sword appeared. The sword was majestic and had a soul-stirring power. His Royal Highness, who was holding the sword, looked solemn. The sword emitted a dazzling light and directly pierced the Queen of Cold Winter. She couldn't move at all. She was frozen by the light of the sword. The treasured sword had directly pierced through her chest. Her eyes darkened, and the feeling of suffocation surged like a tide. Seeing the sword melting her body little by little, she suddenly wanted to cry. This was a King misunderstanding. An exclamation sounded in the dormitory. The Winter Queen opened her eyes and touched her chest. There was no wound. She saw the Prince of Early Spring standing outside the big bed with a smile on his face and looked at her silently. "You just now?" The Winter Queen opened her mouth. She suddenly realized that everything that had happened earlier wasn't real. Instead, it was an incomparably realistic dream. However, in the hands of the Prince of Early Spring, there was also that shining sword in his dream. "This sword was given to me by the magic mirror spirit when I left the inn." The prince said indifferently, "Your Majesty, what you saw in your dream was what it asked me to do. Anyway, the mirror spirit didn't tell me how to complete it, so I'll do it in my own way. Please forgive me if I frightened you." Winter Queen. Nan Xiaonan swallowed her saliva subconsciously. How should she say it? Looking at the Prince of Early Spring in front of her, she felt as if she saw the boss in person. Mainly, among so many page worlds, only the prince had the aura of a boss. You're not afraid that I'm really a servant of the god of darkness to resurrect it?" Nan Xiaonan frowned. At this time, the prince put away the sword in his hand. "When I saw your Majesty outside the windmill for the first time that day, I could feel that your Majesty values the little princess very much, which is different from what the mirror spirit said." Nan Xiaonan thought for a while and said, "As the mirror spirit said, white snow is the key to resurrecting the god of darkness, so I'm naturally very nervous. I trust my feelings more." The prince shook his head. "Besides, that lady chose to go with you that day. I think, if your Majesty really did something wrong to her, she should be the only one who came. You're probably dead now. Damn it, if you really kissed me just now, I would still be dead." "Why are you so sure?" "Because that lady also wanted to kill me," the Prince of Early Spring said with a complicated expression. "She really wanted to kill me, and I can feel her decisiveness." "You, Miss Yi, want to kill this Prince of Early Spring?" "Right, with the character of the servant girl. I'm afraid she thinks that the whole Book of Gaia has offended her master, right? She didn't kill you in the end, so why?" Nan Xiaonan just finished asking, but she quickly waved her hand and said, "Don't answer me this question." The Prince of Early Spring looked at her strangely and said, "You're not the real Queen of Winter, right?" Nan Xiaonan was secretly surprised. The prince said, "Now that I think about it, if the mirror spirit didn't lie. In fact, I can be sure that it didn't lie. After all, it transformed into a sword, and we have the same mind. But since that lady is willing to go with you, it means that you're not the real Queen of Winter. So, can I think that, without me, Or even the mirror spirit, the crisis of the god of darkness has actually been resolved? Nan Xiaonan blinked. She suddenly didn't know how she should continue acting. Nan Xiaonan suddenly felt very scared. If this prince of early spring was a little hot-blooded and didn't use the dream method, but really stabbed her with the sword, would she directly go offline and bury her soul directly in the Ark of the Covenant? Could she only wait for the boss to remember to light up her life lamp? Damn it. When the servant girl asked me to replace the Queen of Winter, did she already think about this? The longest road she walked must be the servant girl's dead end. End of this chapter.